Hello, hello, good morning.
What's your favorite scary movie?
Good morning, good.
You tell me your name, I'll tell you mine.
I don't think so.
Why don't you want to talk to me? What's that noise?
Popcorn.
You making popcorn?
Uh-huh.
I only eat popcorn at the moment.
I'm getting ready to watch a video.
Really? What?
Oh, just some scary movie.
Bum, 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 bum. All right, girls. Oh, I'm gonna sneeze. Oh my God.
Can I be the helpless victim?
Okay, let's see.
No, please don't kill me, Mr. Ghostface. I want to be in the sequel.
All right, all right, all right. How's everyone doing? Hope everyone is well. All right, let's get situated here. I'm very excited. Let's move into some levels content. I think what I'm going to try to do today is re-explain the levels with where it's at and take questions about where it could go. And I think if you're new and you've never heard me discuss my levels, or if you're someone who's heard me discuss it 20 times, hopefully you'll hear brand new information today, along with, some things you maybe have heard, because we've been discussing the levels a lot in the Discord and usually doing our our VC events or something. And I have all these great language tools I get to pick up and think about the levels in a different way, because it's just a growing thing that I'm working on, because I'll be working on it for the rest of my life. It's one of those things that will never be finished. It probably will always be updating. And I think that's exciting, so very exciting stream for us today. I think it will be great. Okay, now Chad says, oh my God, I've been loving your BoJack analysis, and the levels talk had me a bit confused, so this is perfect timing. Perfect. I love reviewing BoJack. I mean, the reason people wanted me to review BoJack was because they thought he was a level 1, which is interesting because it depends on what season we're talking about, and we just finished season 2, so we only know BoJack up to season 2 right now, so hopefully no spoilers here. But the way that I want to have this conversation is to move through the levels, take questions, of course, but to sort of, practice myself explaining it to people, because this is my pet project. This is my special interest. This is my contribution to sort of offering tools and my contribution to the philosophy bubble in a small way. So I'm hoping we have a lot of fun today. I think it will be great, honestly. Okay, I've got my tea in hand. My allergies are crazy, but we'll work around them as per usual. My key membership for 13 months. Let's go. Said your skin is glowing, hair luscious and curly, and level talk, question mark. I fear she has diva out, y'all. It is a diva day, girls. It's a diva day. So first and foremost, let me just start here that if you don't know anything about my levels, like you're brand new, I have a special interest in philosophy. I love examining what it means to be a person and what it means to exist in the universe, the world, but I want to include space, because I think sometimes people think like the world is Earth, but Earth is just like a small bubble to a whole vast universe. Okay. So when I created the levels, there's a levels 1 through 5. I wasn't a 5. When I created it, I was a 4, but I felt like I was creating it to explain a phenomenon, to explain an experience that I was having and other people around me were having to some extent. Now, the framework of the levels will always be the most clear in my own head. So sometimes, people identify as 5s or talk like they're 5s, or maybe I might identify them as 5s, but if they don't understand the framework truly, then they probably won't be or can't be or aren't actually engaging with the levels in the correct way. So there might be some dilemma in leveling people, because I need to communicate the framework correctly for people to actually not give into that monkey brain urge, that caveman urge to be identified as a level 5. So sometimes what happens is people will get really excited to be a level 5, but that's kind of defeating the purpose of being a level 5. Is like, it isn't about being exciting. It's about properly categorizing the self. So I think what happens is that when I communicate it, the framework might sound like it makes sense to you, and maybe it does, but maybe it doesn't. I try not to level people very black and whitely. Like I try not to say like, this is so true. Usually if it's like a 1 or a 5, when it's a 2, it's like really easy. I feel like 2 leveling is like really easy because it's so obvious. But I feel like with other levels, it's a lot harder to tell where people are at. But ultimately, this tool is for you to identify and categorize where you are on your own journey. It's not to devalue other people. It's not to hurt other people. It's not to boost your ego. It's to allow you a chance to kind of understand how the world is going to work for you in a positive way. Okay, so just a reminder, here's a little graph. There are 2 ways to think about the levels, but they're the same in the end. You could look at it like a linear thing. Oh, I'm a level 1, I want to get to level 5, though most people are born 2s and are 2s, right? Or you can look at it like a circular kind of idea where at the end of the day, like, it doesn't matter what level you are, you're still on the same graph. But, you know, if you're in a coma, as we often say on this channel, if you're in a coma, like, you're no level because you're neither introspecting nor extrospecting. So this is about introspection. So again, if your ego is wrapped up in being a 5, like, you're missing the point of the framework. But if your ego is a fear that you're a 1, you're also missing the point of the framework. But also I understand that initial fear because 1s are, you know, sort of categorized pretty horribly. So 1's the least amount of introspection, 5's the most amount of introspection. But again, the 5s are not meant to boost the ego. I think the more introspective you become, the wiser you become, the more humble you should become, not the more arrogant. So that's difficult to explain in a world of 2s, in which 2s are always interacting with the ego. They always want to be the top of the food chain, the biggest and baddest, the greatest. They always want to amplify the ego. So it's going to be hard for people to genuinely understand. And this is some of the feedback I've gotten in the past, which is like, oh, she made this like levels introspection hierarchy and put herself at the top. There is no top. And this is going to be hard for people to understand. So here's how I want to try to explain it to you, and maybe it'll make more sense. Bringing out the paint, guys. Bringing out the paint. Officially a streamer, okay? So when you look at, hold on here. When you look at a bubble, okay, this is a bubble. You should see it on your screen in black. Okay, this is a bubble. And we all live in bubbles, and bubbles are our perception. So you can think of your perception as literally the eyes that see or the mind that perceives. But really, this is about the mind. What is the mind perceiving, and how does it process information in a way that is going to give you an idea into the self, into everything outside of the self? Because that's really what we're focusing on, right? Existing in and out of the self and within the construct of the earth itself. Hold on, let me do some editing here really fast because this is actually gonna annoy me. Hold on. Da, 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 da. If you guys have questions, just let me know and I'll get to them when I get to them. Okay, so this circle is the bubble. And we're going to focus on 2s right now. So 2 bubbles. That's most people. Babies are born 2s. Most people are 2s. Okay, we're going to focus on the 2 bubble because I think it's just the most relatable, which is great. Like, what a good feeling. Okay. And I'm going to bring out my I'm going to work a little slowly here because I'm still figuring out paint. Okay. So these are the bubbles, and they're not the greatest layers, but stay with me here. 2 C's exist here. Okay, this is where the 2 C's are. They're at the bottom of the pyramid of a 2 bubble. Okay, 2s are most people. That's why we start with 2s, even though that's why it's not linear. If I started with 1s, it wouldn't make any sense because 1s are a reaction and against the framework of the 2. 2s are most people. People born into bubbles, exist within bubbles, process their existence through the lens of that bubble. Okay, so 2 C's exist, and their whole perception only exists, though in a wider bubble, only in this small section here. And as they get more introspective, they get into 2 B's, okay? And 2Bs are still 2s in this wider bubble, but they have all of the access of the lower bubble and the middle bubble. And then as they continue on, now there's 2As. And again, the problem with human brains is you're going to convince yourself that you want to be a 2A instead of a 2B. But ironically, most 2As don't become 5s, whereas 2Bs are more likely to be a 5. So the trap of the human brain will tell you, oh, I got to be a 2-5 or 2A then, because I want to get to 5. But the irony literally is that 2As are so trapped in the height of the bubble that it's harder for them to pop the bubble. So the popping of the bubble is the popping of the perception that will allow you to examine your life and everything outside of your life differently. And that difference is the key between your depth of understanding in terms of introspection, extrospection, not because you're better than other people. If you are following my framework, when you get into 5, you should feel like you know the least amount in a very particular way, in a philosophical sense, right? That says I thought 2A meant closer to going into 3. That's what your brain wants you to think, which is why I'm here to also challenge the way our brains work. So yes, your brain will tell you, because that's how your biological experience is. It will tell you, oh, it's a hierarchy. Oh, I want to be a 2A before I'm a 3. But you don't want to be a 2A before you're a 3. You want to be a 2B who goes into a 3. 2As can go to 3. It's just less likely because of the way that the 2A framework works for brains. So if you go back to this graph, you can look at it linear. So you can go, oh, I start off as a 2 and I go to a 3. The only reason 2s have levels and nothing else does is because 2 bubbles, people are really truly having very profound introspective experiences in their lives. A 2 Muslim or Catholic or Mormon who's having a great realization within self, within the framework of a religious bubble, can be having like an immense amount of profound introspection. So most people born 2s are still capable of an amazing amount of introspection, extrospection, no doubt, right? It's just limited. It's not bad, it's limited. And so the limitedness, that word limited, good or bad, is based off your framework of values. So this is still the bubble. This round shape is the bubble, okay? This is the big bubble. And as long as you exist within this bubble, there's so many options for you in terms of how you exist, how you love, how you express, you know, how you spend your limited time on earth, right? So there's so much introspection to be had just within this framework of the 2 bubble. Now, the reason people get confused a little bit is, hold on, is like there's going to be this idea you're going to see, right? Where now you want to like get out of the 2 bubble and into the other bubble. What does that look like? Well, it's kind of confusing to explain because, let me see here. Let me do it this way. Okay. Is it starting to make sense a little bit when you look at it like this? So people start off not in the direct center, but instead just outside of it. Because we're, for some reason, at this place in history where we're born into constructs with, you know, art and philosophy and understanding and depth, because we know what love is, because we have scripture, because we have education, we're not born in this little inner bubble, which might be, you know, again, not exactly oneness in an ironic way, but let's say, you know, the 2s exist here all the same. And then there's like a bridge that exists to 3 and 4 and 5. The idea is you're expanding out. You're not going above people, you're expanding out. So 1s, let's say 1s are like this. This is if you're just listening, I'm doing a show on camera right now. This is like a 1. Okay? This is like a 2. Okay? This is like the 3, and this is the 4, and this is the 5. The idea is like the 1 is operating with this much ability to understand, right? This much perception room. And the 2's operating with this, which is actually quite a fucking lot. It's a lot. 3's are realizing like, oh shit, what happens if I just let go? The 4 spreads their arms open, opening up like a vast like opportunity that's like overwhelming. And the 5 learns to make peace with how overwhelming it is because it's a part of radical acceptance, right? What we're looking for is the relationship between the self and everything outside of the self. So you're expanding outwards. You're not reaching for top ego. You're not trying to be the smartest in the room. You're trying to expand the options out. You're trying to expand the options, right? Chet says maybe calling this levels makes us think of hierarchies. Yeah, no doubt. But that's the flaw of the human brain. No matter what I call it, people will make hierarchies. I know this because when I hop into the astrology bubble, there are signs that people dub the bad signs. There are signs that people won't date because of the badness of the label. It doesn't matter what you call it. And that's the other thing I'm trying to make it clear. I'm trying to, it's hard because if you don't get it, you don't get it. But like, it doesn't matter what you call it. And that's the point of our brain. That's how our brains work. So when you can pop that bubble and your brain can learn in a different way, it changes everything. When you can learn that it's not a matter of hierarchy, but it's a matter of expanding out, like it changes everything. And you're right. Like when chat says the numbers make it sound like 5 is the best. Exactly. But it's not. And it doesn't mean that. And no matter how I phrase it, people will think that. That's what I'm trying to make people understand. It doesn't matter what you call it. This is the trap of the bubble. The bubble tells you numbers mean hierarchy. Numbers mean greater. Even colors. One time I had a color that I didn't even think of as like, I had gradient colors on a graph once. And without intending to, people were like, oh, is the darker color the better color or the lighter color the better? And I was like, what? Like no matter what you do, a human brain is really good at putting stuff together without thinking. We're not thinking when we see things. The challenge of the levels is to explain to people how they're not actually thinking. They think they're thinking, but your brain is moving on autopilot, which is sort of in line with Robert Sapolsky's determined in a sense. Until you break that understanding, you will always have an automatic response. Your body is really smart. Your brain is doing all these calculations for you. Subconsciously, you don't even know what's happening. So of course your brain is like numbers, hierarchy, I'm the top, bottom, don't want to be the top. You know, it's doing all the work for you, but you're not doing any of it. You're not evoking your free will to stop that biological experience and say, let's have a higher level experience with our biological, like a deeper, meaningful experience with our biological experience, right? So when we think about our brain and introspection, we're fighting an understanding of our biological limits. And then we're asking, can we go beyond them? I don't think you ever expand past your biology. I don't think you ever, transcend nature. You just have a higher relationship with that nature, or deeper, or use a word that works for your brain that doesn't make you think you're better than other people. Because the moment you think you're better than other people, you've lost the plot. I remember one time we had this infamous discussion in the VC with a person who identified as a 5, and they were saying, don't you think the world would be better if everyone was more like you? No. And you can't be a 5 if you think so. The framework of 5-ness is radically accepting that the world is not about your ego. It's not about thinking the world would be better if it thought like you. That's the 2 thinking. 2s think they have the answer. It's like very fascistic. It's like very fascism. They think the world would be better if it was like them. And that's why the road to hell is paved in good intentions. That's why I'm trying to explain to people the framework of 5-ness is recognizing there is no better. We simply exist on a planet. So thinking you're better than other people and the world would be better if they were more like you is 2 thinking. That's why it's so hard for people, because people can't fathom that, like, I, as the writer of the levels, genuinely doesn't think the world would be better if it was more like me. Like, why would I be the arbiter of all things good when I am as flawed as everybody else? Like, why would me being the arbiter make sense? Now, to be fair, That's why the levels are so hard to conceptualize, because I'm asking you to do something that your base biology has been ingrained in you for millions of years to think is the best. I'm the best species. I'm the best race. I'm the best gender. I'm the best everything. My people are the best. My location's the best. My food is the best. I'm asking you to take those millions of years of evolution and question it, deconstruct it, which is really, really hard. So I'm not here to tell you that this would be easy. I'm just telling you that I think I did it, which is like a big claim. So I'm trying to explain to you how I did it in a way that makes it clear, like being a 5, you're just starting again from the bottom of a different level. So hold on, let me graph that for you. Okay, so let's say, okay, don't sing, Brittany, focus. Let's see. So here are the 2 bubbles, okay? They're here in this little universe and they're all existing together. The 3s and the 2s are hanging out because the 3s are just glorified 2s. So here's 2s and 3s. And this is about perception. We all live on Earth. You can't escape it, okay? You can't escape that we all live on Earth. But their perception is limited to the bubbles, usually the bubbles that they're closest to, related to, born into, maybe popped a bubble into a different bubble, like, oh, I was a Republican, now I'm a Democrat. Okay, same 2 mechanism of the bubble, just a bubble within a bubble. Okay, then somewhere over here, here's like the bridge that the 3 could decide to go on. Okay, here's 4s. Okay, here they are. Woo! Okay, and then the 4 is like in chaos. The 4 is like, oh no, everything that I thought was over here and mattered, it doesn't matter to this thing over here, which is like everything, like the universe, okay? The whole universe. Hold on, let me move my thingy. Boop. Okay, so everything over here is like the universe, everything over here. So the 2s and the 3s realize, oh, I can go to 4. But the 4 realizes like, oh, all these things that I thought mattered over here don't matter to everything over here. But what's everything over here? It's everything around all of us. And the 5s are good with it. Like the 5s are like, okay, cool. Okay, now if that graph is too confusing, let's do it this way. Because I have multiple ways to explain the same concept. Because everyone learns differently, okay? So, whoop, that's not what I wanted. Hold on, I'm learning how to use paint. Okay. So, okay. So here's Earth. And we all live on Earth. All of us live here, okay? All of us live on the same planet. And then we know that there's all these other planets and stars. And we know maybe somewhere in the universe, there's a different form of life that exists. We know this conceptually, though there are 2s who do not believe there's life on other planets because it doesn't work with their scripture. So even though we've made movies, we've talked about it, scientists are open to it, even though we're looking for life on other planets, even though we're sure there's gotta be life on other planets, there are literal bubbles within our small planet that will not actually entertain that idea, because it contradicts their book. And their book says, as an example, that like a God put them here on Earth to be tested. So the world revolves around the Earth bubble, right? Bubble is perception, okay? But we know that in a sense, and yet we can't all agree on it. Now, if you take that idea, and I'm telling you right now that there are people who don't think there's a life outside of Earth, right? Not even conceptually, right? They are limited to that perception of that bubble because of the way they decide to believe about life. Not what they know, but what they believe. And you look at them and think, why are you limiting yourself? Okay. 5s are open. The framework of 5ness is an openness to whatever is true, not what we want to believe is true. So it's not about making a prescription on a belief. It's about finding the knowing. So instead of saying there is a God or there is aliens or there is life, you know what I mean? It's not about that. It's about the idea of what could be and what could be true. But the problem with 2s is they want to know what is true right now so they can decide how to be, because they can't seem to fathom existing without knowing. Versus when you get to a 5 framework, you realize it's not about knowing, it's about learning. It's about accepting what is true versus what we want to be true because it's more convenient or more interesting or more stable or more community based or more familiar. And so it's like trying to explain to somebody, why do we not have to reinvent the wheel? Because we already know. Now, can we expand on the wheel? Yes, but to reinvent it is unnecessary. Okay, another way to look at it. Ooh, Discord said this is a graph I did during the past event. Ooh, I like that. Okay, Discord with our graphs. Okay, so I'm trying to think of another way to explain it. So twos are born. Okay, twos are people who are born into a bubble, exist in a bubble, and are doing their best. Everyone's doing their best. That's another part of radical acceptance that we're going to struggle with during the conversation. Everyone is doing their best, right? But is limited by perception, which is the bubble. But there's no prescription I need to make on an animal species evolved or on a placement of a group of consciousness people, like conscientious people. Like I don't have to make a prescription about getting to 5 because it's not about the obligation. It's about accepting that there is no obligation, that there is no objective that we have access to. So 2s are doing their best. Every person is doing their best. You could even say 1s are doing their best, but they're really doing less than their best. So if you have wrong button. Oh my God, Brittany. Hold on. Okay. I'm going to take some questions too, because I think that will help where I'm headed to explain this. Because this is like difficult because depending on who's listening and where you're at, you might have different questions. But okay, let's say you start off in the 2 bubble. That's babies. Everybody. All of us are born 2s. And this is like the example of expanding out into 4 and 5, right? This is like the example. 1s are kind of like over here. 1s aren't even engaging with the bubbles in almost any capacity. They exist in the bubbles. They're there in the bubbles, but they're not really engaging with the premise. See, a 2 engages. A 2 is present. A 2 is there. They're living within the construct of the bubble. The 1s are sort of like outside of the bubbles, but they're trapped in their own bubble. It's still a bubble, but they're just trapped in a singular perception of bubble. And this is why it's hard to explain the 1s, because they're so unable to get better regardless of the resources, what's given to them, access to privilege, money, education. They refuse to engage. It's like a form of stagnation that's so bad, it's unbelievable, right? One of the things we created with this community to explain the 1s is like a person who's in the desert starving. They haven't had food or water. And finally, someone walks up to them and offers them a cupcake. I see you spamming the cupcake in chat. Let's go. Someone offers you a cupcake, right? And you're like, no, I'm not going to eat the cupcake. And the person's like, why? Aren't you starving? Aren't you thirsty? And the 1 says, yes, but I'm not going to eat the cupcake. But why? Why wouldn't you eat the cupcake? And the 1 will create all these reasons for why they can't eat the cupcake, right? But none of them will make sense because anybody within their right mind would eat the cupcake. But it's not about insanity. 1s aren't crazy. 1s aren't insane. They're refusing to engage with any part of their like, almost like their own instinct to survive, which maybe in the future we'll find out it's some mental illness or some bug in the brain. But all the 1s that I know weren't people that felt sick in that sense or, disabled in that sense. They were people who I knew like their track records. I knew their life history. I knew their medical histories. Like there was something deeply lacking inside of them that was so strange. It was like an introspection issue. It's a phenomenon. I'm telling you, I'm pointing out a phenomenon within the human species in which we ignore these people and write them off. But I'm looking at them like you are incapable of engaging. And I'm not sure why. I'm not sure why you're incapable of engaging because none of the data we have gives a reason for the why. So this is why the levels is all about the why. Why are you doing that? Because that's the only way I know how to level you. I can't know how to level you if I don't know why what you're doing is like, I don't know what, like, I need to know why. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. So sometimes I'll get questions or comments on my old levels video, and they'll say something like, hey, I think I'm definitely a 4. But when they explain it, I can tell they're not explaining 4-ness. They're explaining a 2's version of 4-ness. So sometimes within the 2 bubbles, you can go through the levels. It's almost like in a metaphorical sense, but not in a literal sense. If we're being literal about the levels, 2's can't be 5's, right? But if we're being metaphorical, then 2's can have 5-like vibes. And that's why people think a lot of 2's are 5's, but they're not, because their Y is different. Like their Y is different. Okay? Does that kind of make sense? I know it sounds really strange because it's hard to even understand what kind of a person this might be if you're not seeing them. And it's hard to say. That's why I'm excited to finish BoJack Horseman to see what he's at by the end. But I will say, as I'm watching BoJack, by the end of season 2, I think Todd is a 1. And everyone else seems like 2's, though BoJack is basically on the verge of 1-ness at this point at the end of season 2. But Todd in particular is one of my favorite ones. Jerry from Rick and Morty, he's a 1. At least first 4 seasons. So 1's are really difficult because they're not always like bad or evil people. They're worse. They're like incompetent to such a degree that they're basically useless to themselves and their communities. That's the way that I like to explain it. Usefulness is a triggered word. Some people really hate it. Some people love it. I just like, if you can't help yourself, how about that? Instead of useless, help. You can neither help yourself nor your community. Usually 2's who are going through a rough time, addiction, mental health, something, usually they're pretty helpful to somebody. Usually they're able to do something. Usually they're able to function somehow. Not fully, not greatly, but something happens. It's like the dad who's suffering with an addiction but somehow puts food on the table. It's like, yeah, they're not the most introspective. They're dealing with a disease. There's lots of elements, but there's some functionality to them. It's not like, and again, because we're dealing with bubbles, some people may hear this and think like, oh, Brittany is talking about disabled people. Obviously, I'm not talking about disabled people. Like, I think half my audience and I are disabled. Because disability is a spectrum, but disability isn't going to be the reason for your level. The same way that a person in a coma isn't leveled. Because a level is about engagement with introspection, extrospection. You have to be engaged. You have to be thoughtful. You have to be engaged. And if you're not engaged and you're not operating through a framework of 5-ness or 2-ness, then what are you operating within? What framework? Like, what framework are you using, right? Because again, we're still, probably evolved animals on a planet, a biological creature that's evolved through all of these, environmental impacts and DNA and genetics. And then we come out and we're this. And this is ever changing, right? It's just ever changing. Okay, let me answer some questions and then we'll keep going with the little graph. Okay, let's see. Chat says your description of a 2A reminds me of the scripture. It's easier for a rich man to enter the eye of the needle than to enter the kingdom of heaven. Replace rich man with 2A and heaven with 5. Exactly. Great example. Yes, it is so much harder for a 2A. So, okay, what happens is the 2's are born into bubbles, exist within bubbles, and the bubbles usually give them a sense of meaning and purpose to their existence, which allows them to form religion and society and community and values. Okay, 2A's have the realization that like, oh, I don't think there's anything to this life. Like, it's kind of like the nihilist who's like, nothing matters, bro. Nothing matters. So you might as well fuck everybody over and take their money. That's Jeff Bezos, baby. Jeff Bezos, Elon, Trump, they're all like, nothing matters, dude. They don't believe in God. None of the people who believe in God would operate within the bubble of like what Trump and Elon are willing to do, right? What Bezos is willing to do. They are playing a very different game than the people they manipulate. It's one thing voting for them, that's a manipulation, but to be the arbiter of, right? The creator of, that's why they're stuck in their ego. That's why Trump could never imagine that there's something truly greater. This man is not afraid of something greater. This man is not in awe of something greater. This man is not actually thinking about a God. He's thinking he is the God, the 2A complex. So I'm going to be the top of the food chain. Now, 2As have their own, like, I call them high functioning, low functioning, but nothing to do with autistic verbiage because that's out of date anyways. But more like Jeff Bezos, successful, non-successful 2As, Mark Rubio. Like, there's the Mark Rubios, the non-successful 2As, and then there's like the successful 2As who maybe are like the Trumps or the Elons or something. Or Jeff Bezos is a better example. The tech guys are actually incredibly good at being 2As because they're doing everything possible to be the king here on earth, you know, if we want to use scripture again, right? So I think there's something to be said there. But they are going to have a harder time like having humility and moving to 5 because they're now trapped by the construct of the gluttony. They're trapped by the hedonism. They're trapped by the materialistic. You know, it's harder. So yeah. Chet says, do you think autistic people have a better chance of reaching 5? No, I think that's the wrong way to think about it. Nobody on the planet has a better chance of reaching 5 because they're a woman, a man, black, disabled, gay, religious. None of those things are the right way to see the levels. It's if you have the right combination of percentages of like facing adversity, questioning meaning, bringing into light. So it's not a matter of like autistic or not autistic or minority status, this minority status. It's right amount of challenge from status quo to push you into meaning of something bigger. But a lot of minorities stay within the 2 bubble just fine, right? A lot of autistic people stay 2s. A lot of really introspective people stay 2s. 2s have an incredible amount of introspective people. Most of the philosophers that we even admire, by all accounts, based off of their own work, are 2s, but they're considered like pretty introspective people because they're limited by the construct of the bubble. And look, I think the reason why the levels are so hard for people or like bother people is because I really do think I'm offering something that's like similar to other things, but I'm asking you to push it into the universe. I feel like every time I read other people's variations of introspection or even Maslow's hierarchy of needs, yes, but more. Like, I want the more. I think we're not there yet. And excuse me for being an AFAB person contributing to philosophy in this sense, but yeah, I'm sure some man will take this and take credit for it. You know what I mean? But like, you know, I'm dead serious. Like, I think there's something more. And I think I've experienced it. And if I'm one data point and I'm experiencing it with other people, then they're 2 data points. And then the question is, how many billions of data points could there be? And that's why I put this out here. That's why I'm hoping like people will speak up. But also it's about like, do you understand the framework of what I'm expressing? Now, sometimes in my comment sections, I really feel like, oh, they're getting it. Like, sometimes I feel like, oh my God, they're getting it. And then sometimes I hear it from people and I'm like, they're not getting it, but they could be logically getting it. Like, they're getting it, but they're not getting it. And that's fine. That's not a bad thing. That's a good thing, right? So I know it's possible for people to get what I'm saying. The question is, do you have to experience it to get it? And I do think you do, which is why I think most people are 2s. Because most people just by statistics alone operate within these limited frameworks, right? I mean, you can even look at anything like, I mean, just think about harm reduction in general. So a part of it is like accepting you're an animal, accepting what is versus what can be. And then once you accept it, then you can talk about what can be. But most people aren't accepting what is. They're just jumping right to what can be. You can't solve the problem until you accept the limitations of the problem solvers, which is us. We are the limited problem solvers, humans. We give humans way too much credit and sometimes not enough, right? Okay. Chet says, are incels inherently 1s or could they be 2Cs? See, by the literal definition or by the new colloquial definition? By the literal definition, okay, anyone who identifies as an incel could either be a 2 or a 1. Anybody who processes incel by the origination of the word could just be using it as a categorization, right? So it depends on which way you're using the word incel. But to identify as an incel is very lacking in introspection, extrospection. Because why would you identify yourself by that? What is the benefit? You know what I mean? Like, what is the overall benefit? Allergy. Okay. Indiana living in this room does not help, bro. Because she lives in these sheets. Okay. Let me see. Okay. Can you be hyper political involved and at 5? Yes. It depends on the way you're involved in the politics though. And it depends on who you're involved with. So the five framework demands a level of self-awareness for your relationship with self and everything outside of self. But a 5 could engage in politics. I mean, I'm being political right now, but I have my little LGBTQIA flag in my little video because I'm signaling to the 2 bubbles. Because right now, within those 2 frameworks, discrimination against LGBTQIA folks is okay. Versus in a 5 framework, there's no place for it. Within a 5 framework, discrimination has no place. Like no place in the way that we use it to objectify or subjugate people. 5 framework is not interested in engaging or should not be interested in engaging with the continuation of the subjugation of people. So when you vote, when you interact with politics, it should be getting people closer to options than to restrictions, which is why it'd be very weird for a 5 to vote for Trump because all of Trump is restriction. A Trump vote for a 5 framework is like a slap in the face to 5 frameworks. There's no reason to vote for that man, even if it's at the expense of your own life. Like there's no reason for it within the 5 framework because again, maybe you could give me the argumentation, but the argumentation would be rooted in 2 reasoning. My family members, they might get hurt. I could die, you know, all of that stuff. Like, okay, why are you holding on to that attachment versus doing what's necessary for humanity or moving forward in a particular way? Like, why are you voting for that? I don't like, what's the reasoning other than fear, right? Or arrogance, right? Hold on. Discord said, may I suggest putting a black border around humans, going to humans so the text is more readable. Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll keep that in mind. Good idea. Okay, now, what other questions do we have? Chad says, are 5s unattached in a Buddhist way, or can 5s have more attachment than a Buddha would? Well, what is the framework of a Buddha? Right? I think from my limited understanding of the Buddhist concept of a Buddha is that it's an experience of unattachment, sometimes at the expense of the people around you, or sometimes at the expense of structure, but also it's a state of being. So I'm not sure how this might relate to introspection, extrospection. So I might be too limited in my understanding of formalized like Buddhism and what it could mean. I've read books, I've understood lectures, I feel like I get it, but sometimes I feel like I have a harder time relating it to the levels, right? I think 5-ness is a framework of understanding the self in relation to existence, but Buddhism might be more on the journey of existing in a present state separate from that introspection, extrospection, which does coincide with the idea of like being just with. So if I meditate in present, if I meditate in the present and I'm just existing, then I feel like I'm closer to the Buddha than I am closer to the 5. Though the 5 recognizes because of this ability to meditate, that's the framework of the 5. Right? So like if you exist within that, it depends on what you mean when you say it. Because doesn't Sam Harris identify as a Buddhist? So like a part of me is like, like Sam Harris is not a Buddhist. You know what I mean? Like, or maybe he is, but if that's what a Buddhist is, then no. So I get confused when people identify as Buddhists because I'm like, they're 2s. When they talk, they're so riddled with fear and attachment, and it's very confusing. People's obsession with identifying as a Buddhist, you know what I mean? So I don't know. Like I hear from people and I'm not sure what they mean by it, so I think I get confused, which is also why I try not to explain like other people's philosophies against my levels, because it feels like letting somebody else explain my levels against their philosophies, it's harder for me to understand what they mean when they say Buddhist. Yeah. Okay, let me see. Chad says, can I be so real? I feel like I'm too busy to do introspective work. Does this make sense? Like right now, I want to just focus on getting through my life. Yeah, I think that's survival mode in some ways. So my journey through introspection was I was going to kill myself if I didn't go down this journey. So it wasn't a matter of me not having time. In that same way you want to get through your life, I was going to kill myself if I didn't go on this journey. Most people work just to get through their day. That's normal. But it wasn't working for me. Just getting through my day, just doing it was going to kill me. So if I didn't force myself to stop, lose my job, lose money, remain like get homeless basically, stay with family in order to like really think about what I was doing with my life, like I would have died. So yeah, I think most people don't have to be very introspective to get through life because most people just need to get through their life. But it was never good enough for me personally to just get through my life. Like when I say I wake up every day happy and I go to bed every day happy, when I say like my life is like in the most beautiful like living way, it's because I personally feel like I had to face my own lack of knowing where I was in the universe and what I was doing here. It wasn't just enough for me to wake up and go to work. I had to do something more. It's not good enough. Now, for some people, I don't even know if it's good enough for them, but it is enough for them not to become more introspective, which is why I say most people stay twos. Because look, okay, let's go back to the graphs. There's nothing wrong. That's why I'm not putting judgment on staying a 2. There is no judgment on being a 2. If you're a 2 and it's working and you're stressed, but there's never a need to look outside the bubble, then don't. But if you're me and you're in this 2 bubble and it was getting smaller and smaller, it was crashing in on me. I had to pop out, whoo, and be like, shit, what's this? And then I saw that there was this bridge to more. And the more goes off the page, right? I don't even know what this more is. I can't see it, guys. You see how I cannot see what's past this page? I did not know what it was, but I knew there had to be something more than this thing over here. I couldn't do it anymore. There has to be more than this. Has to. And I was right. There was. So I started off, whoop, beep, whoop, beep. I started off here. I went to here and I took a chance and I went to here. And then I worked to get here. And now I'm here. Okay? And now I'm like, okay, I got it. I know where I am. And now that I'm 5, okay? So now that I'm 5 and I'm here, now I get to go here and here. And instead of levels, because I don't think that's necessary, I just get to keep learning. I just get to understand all of it, like to the best of my ability. And then, of course, the deepest understanding I know is that I will die not understanding it. A little Socrates for us. Okay, I will die not knowing, but I will live dedicated to knowing. And I will accept every time the truth hits me in the face, whether I like it or not, that it is the truth. But it must be true. What comes after 5? Who knows? Everything. Yes. Now it's just a matter of everything else. As long as it's true. You know? What comes after 5? Death. There is no 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Because the point of my levels is to get us to understand that the limitation of the 2 bubbles exists in this framework. The brain, so I got that question a lot when I put out the levels. What about level 6, 7, and 8? How do you know it's not there? It doesn't have to be there for a more to exist. We only need the framework of the levels to get us to understand 2s. All of this is about 2s. The levels is about 2s. Is it processing? Is it processing? I only needed the framework of the levels because 2s were fucking everything up. I love them. They're the greatest. If 2s didn't have their framework, we wouldn't even need the levels. But because we live in a world of 2s, you have to make the framework up. Because they don't even accept their own frameworks, but you have to create it for people because people can't do it. They can't just accept it, right? Chad says, I think the numbers can be a little misleading. That's why people get hung up on climbing the levels. But to be honest, that's probably unavoidable. It's an attachment. You have to let go of the attachment of the numbers. If you cannot let go of the attachment, you are not a 5. There is no reason to care that it's numbers. It cannot be confusing. It should not be confusing. If it is confusing, you are holding on to the biological attachment or some learned attachment that it matters. Do you get what I'm saying? Like the fact that the numbers are so important to people is proving the levels because the attachment to the numbers is an example of the levels. Like, you're attached to this thing that doesn't matter. You know? Because as the numbers aren't the issue, those who get caught up by the numbers will likely get caught up by any other naming mechanism. Exactly. It doesn't matter. That's why I say, like, this is like the thing that I noticed this. This is going to sound like a really silly example, but it's kind of like when I watch food recipes on YouTube and I just watch the video and I go, okay, I can figure it out. And other people get so mad at the content creator. They're like, you fucking suck. Why isn't the recipe in the chat? How am I going to learn this recipe? You didn't even tell me what ingredients this was. Why did you need them to tell you what ingredients it is? Right? Now, that's because I am an advanced enough cook to look at a video and not need instructions to be like, I could do that. And then I'll recreate it at home. But if you're brand new to cooking, if you don't even know what a spoon is, sure, it's going to sound really fucked up. You're going to get angry and you're going to lash out at a content creator as if they should provide you with this thing that for some of us, they didn't need to provide because there's an attachment there. There's an expectation. There's also a feeling of stupidity. You don't want to feel dumb, right? You don't want to feel stupid. You don't want to feel bad that you're not getting it. Let go of that attachment and realize there's nothing wrong with not knowing. And there's everything great about learning. Oh, hey, why does this person not have a recipe? How do people learn it without the recipe? Can I learn it without the recipe? It's about curiosity. You're limited by your frustration that you're not getting it. So you blame the person who explained it instead of you for not knowing how to listen. What am I not getting? What am I missing? What do I need to do to understand this better? That's the point of introspection. What do I need to do? Not what do they need to do? What do I need to do? Right? Okay. Chess Brittany, what if you feel like proper medication helped 4 become 5s in their experience? Like medication, like drugs? Like, okay, so the great question. Okay, hold on. So you are a mind, a body, and a consciousness. Okay. So your mind is your understanding of like knowledge and education. Okay. Hold on, my little pictures. Not that it's much, but okay. Your brain is how it functions. Okay, functions. And your consciousness is the why. So you might need a medication so your brain can function. You might need the knowledge and education to pick the right medication. And this allows room for your consciousness to have less time worrying about how your brain is malfunctioning and to worry about or spend your time learning how to radically accept. Right? Does that kind of answer that question? So you are 3 parts and all 3 parts need time and care. So meditation for the consciousness, medication for the brain, and education for the mind. Does that kind of translate? Because that's how I look at it. So yes, I couldn't say that drugs are the reason you move levels because introspection is the reason you move levels, not drugs. Medicine, going to the doctor, that's not the reason you become 5. Introspection, extrospection is the reason you become 5. Introspection, the functionality of the levels to explain a relationship to self and everything outside the self. That's the point. That's the idea. Discord says, I think radical acceptance is also partially realizing that you don't have to have a perfectly healthy body and mind, but you need some level of health to achieve the consciousness to reach that. I agree. You don't have to be perfect or in the best place, but you need to be just functional enough to comprehend the relationship to self and everything outside the self. Yeah. I think that's a really good way to think about it. Okay. Kat says, I don't think recipes are like I think also recipes are like a step-by-step thing. I don't think the watcher is in the wrong. Just the recipe thing, not related to the levels, but it's a metaphor. I'm trying to give you an example to explain to you the levels. The watcher is wrong for getting angry at the creator for not giving them exactly what they need when they can't read their mind. It is wrong to yell at a content creator for not making content that works for your brain. They created a recipe. The format is the recipe is available on their Instagram. You can click a link and go to it. If you're upset by the way it works, find a content creator that works for you. But instead of doing that, you yell at the content creator. When some of us don't need that from the content creator. So I'm saying the recipe is an example of why you're struggling with anything else in life. You feel entitled. Why do you feel entitled by a content creator creating content that only works for your brain? Because this is the limitation of our introspection, extrospection. This is why we have to become more introspective, extrospective, and be like, okay, how do I consume the world without feeling entitled to the world changing because I need it to be better for me? This is why we go back to this idea that a 5 would never want the world to be like them, because then that would only make the world better for them and nobody else, right? Not literally, but basically. So why would you demand of people to make more comfortable for you? You wouldn't, right? You would create a mechanism to encourage people to give everybody, the most amount of people, choice. But in a world where one person gets the world to revolve around them, less people have choice. Okay, let's see. Any other questions before we go on to the next part? Let me see. Did I miss anything? Chat says, I honestly pity ones because they aren't introspective enough to follow their joy or know they're living in self-imposed misery. Wrong. Ones are not only self-aware enough to know, but to pity them is to almost be worse. To pity a 1 is to misunderstand and not radically accept. Do not pity the ones. They definitely know. They definitely know, but they're not doing anything about it, which is different. That's why 1s are specific. They're not naive who don't know. Lots of 2s don't know. It is more likely a 2 will not know than a 1 will not know. This is why 1s are an anomaly. Because 1s, there was a theory we had for a while that maybe 1s are like fallen 3s. Maybe they're like, but they're not. That's the wrong way to look at them, right? But they could have some relationship. There could be 3s who became 1s, right? You can be a 2 who becomes a 1. You're not born a 1. You're born a 2. Because people are doing their best with what they have, right? Chet says 1s go, well, this is just how I am, as they make their life actively worse, or that this is how I choose to engage. I think of 1s as people making a choice to engage with this quality of life. They refuse to be more introspective. And we have to accept that they're making that choice instead of giving them a script that gives them an ability to continue to blame it on anything else. Again, it's much more complex than just assuming some linear thought pattern. And I know this is different because I interact with so many people a day. Most people don't. I interact with so many humans. And every time I meet a person, I'm like categorizing them to understand like why you're doing what you're doing, right? But it is kind of one of those things that it's almost hard to explain without the tangible evidence. But then how do you make that without knowing a person's inner workings, right? Guys, as I remember you saying years ago that Rogan was a 3. Can you explain moving through levels using him as an archetype? So Rogan was a great example of somebody who exhibited possibilities of 3, but obviously picked a 2 bubble and stayed in it and dug a hole in it. He's like firmly in the conspiracy theorist bubble. He's like perfectly fitted into the bubble he ended up in, which was a perceived openness, a perceived curiosity. Actually, Joe Rogan's like a really good example of somebody who says I'm curious, who wants to look curious, but in every way is not engaging with curiosity. He just has faux curiosity. But that's where he thrives. That's where he feels the most alive. It's where he feels the most vindicated. It's the limitation of his bubble, but it's a choice he made. I think Joe could have had a lot of opportunities to maybe be more introspective, but he stayed really comfortably in this 2 bubble he created. So he's like a 2B. I place Joe Rogan as a 2B, who found his bubble, lives within the bubble, feels like he's the top dog within his bubble, feels really comfortable, has a level of humility within his bubble that matches the expectation of humility within that bubble. He doesn't have a humility that extends outside the bubble, but within the mechanism of the bubble, I think Joe exhibits like a lot of what that bubble considers curiosity and openness. You know? That's where I would place Joe, you know? And you can see how limited, folk curiosity where it ends up, And that's why I say conspiracy theorists come to conclusions with bad data. That's why it's not good. So as much as you think you're thinking outside the box and you're thinking unlike anybody else, you are not. Like, you're not. You're as limited as a person who you think isn't limited because they're not asking the right questions. You're not asking the right questions. Like, you're not, you think you're asking the right questions, but you're not, Do ones have the capacity to choose adversity for reasons regarding purpose and meaning? Do ones have the capacity to choose adversity for reasons regarding purpose and meaning? Can you ask that in a different way? I think I understand the question, but I want to make sure that I'm answering it correctly. I think they could attempt it, is my answer right now. But whether or not they complete it is up to them. But if they completed it, then maybe that would be their opportunity to be a 2. Because look, a 1 could be a 5. I believe you can go from 1 to 5. Right? I believe that. But the dilemma is that that would be a very specific journey. And I don't have an example of it, but it is within the realm of possibility according to my framework. Yeah. Oh my God, excuse me. Okay, let me see. Tess says, I understand. I also hate entitlement. However, there is requirements. For example, if I pay a service and I expect it to have it, is that entitlement? I guess the content creator is somewhat selling. It is still entitlement. Not all entitlement is bad entitlement. Like, if I paid for something, like, you should be entitled to getting that product. But you're not paying a content creator to watch their TikToks. You're not entitled to a content creator writing down the recipe. But you're not entitled. That's what I'm saying. We don't even know the proper ways to feel entitled. It is improper to watch a TikTok and feel entitled to a TikToker presenting the way you need to be presented. That is the wrong form of entitlement. If you directly pay a business for gas for your car and they give you water, you are entitled to gasoline. Because you paid for gasoline, you didn't pay for water. But you are not entitled for other people to exist in the way that makes you, like, works only and ever for you. These are different things, right? Yeah. Chet says, do you think 5s can be wrongly perceived as nihilists? Yeah, I think that happens pretty frequently. And we have had some discourse about, like, being a sort of a 4 nihilist versus a 2 nihilist. So let's go back. Let's keep going through the levels, okay? So you can have the 2s and they can go to 3, okay? They can end up at 4, in which there's a nihilism, and a 2, there's a nihilism. So the 2 nihilist goes like, the 2 nihilist might say something like, nothing matters, so I'm going to scam all these people through drop shipping to make money, even though I know it's unfair and it's bad practice, because fuck it. Everyone sucks. We suck. We're just animals on a planet. Let's fucking take advantage of those other animals. Okay, that could be a 2 nihilist. A 4 nihilist has a true and deep understanding that everything we experience in life is like a construct of perception. It's real and it's happening, but it's not real in the way we perceive it to be real. It's real in a different kind of way. And so, yes, nothing matters, but the result of nothing matters doesn't necessarily have to be, let's take advantage of people. It can be, great, what more could there be? Right? It's about the directionality. The 2 nihilist often sinks into being corrupt, because the instinct people have is that's why 2 religious people, when 2 atheist people are talking to them, the 2 religious person will say, without God, everybody would be rapists. Okay, first of all, y'all rapists with God, so But the religious person might say, well, if you don't have God to tell you what's right or wrong, what would you do instead? Rape? And the two nihilist might think, yeah, only my raping comes in the form of selling a product that doesn't work to people and not caring, right? It comes in the form of nothing matters. We might as well take advantage of people. Versus, hey, nothing matters. Nothing. There is no attachment to that thought. Nothing matters. But what does nothing matters means? It means nothing is prescribed in the way that we process our reality. That there isn't a prescription to our existence in the way that we understand it, because we only understand it through myth and lore. We only understand it through story. And if a story can be changed, if their narration can move a comma and change the structure of a sentence, then like, what does it mean to know our meaning? So this is like the meaning crisis. And when you realize like, oh, wait, everything is going to be, you know what I mean? There's a relationship to self that's changing, a relationship to the world that's changing. My relationship with the world changed. Like the way I process the world has changed, you know? Chat, I keep seeing a couple comments that keep saying freedom, freedom. Freedom is a myth created by man. Freedom is a myth created by the process of construct. Freedom is just is. You are born free. You cannot become more free. What you become is less entangled, which people correlate to being more free. But freedom is a narration they sell you through marketing because they've convinced you to accept that it is taken from you. No one can take your freedom. They can simply constrain you, which is a different form of freedom. There's physical freedom, but we're talking about spiritual freedom. We're talking about being joyful when the world melts around you. The world has convinced you that you were born not free. But freedom, that's a story we tell ourselves. A narrative and a construct we believe. Even when you put me in a prison cell, I am free. You cannot take my freedom away from me. You can simply put a energy against an energy, a force against a force. The bear does not take away my freedom because they killed me. They took away my life, which is different. It's different. You were born free. We are simply free agents coming against other free agents. And that's why within the 5 framework, if we can all process for free agents, we can have different relationships with how those free agents work within each other or come to head with each other. But then we're also limited by our biological experience and what level of biological experience we're having. So if you're at the basic of caveman, you might operate much similar to a bear that has that predisposition to just be moving within its base reality as well. Okay. And then if you engage with people at a different framework, it's like a different experience because you're having a different relationship with the perception. So if somebody comes up to me and, it's like the way you would react differently. Like, if somebody kills my sibling, maybe I'd wish for them to be dead. But why would I wish for them to be dead? What does that get me? What does killing them do for me? I have a different relationship with these things now. I used to think putting people on death row would make me feel better. But then I realized, like, what does it matter to me if they die? What they did already happened. What matters to me is that we don't let it happen again by not doing it to somebody else. So the irony is, like, when we kill people, we're killing them because they killed somebody else. And that just doesn't make any sense. But it feels good. And temporarily, as a cope, feels like the right answer. But I don't think it's the right answer. I think it just sounds like the right answer. And that's why I want to make sure things don't just sound right, but they are right. And the right is a construct based off of my belief, Brittany's belief, that there might be an objective direction to move into, but we don't know what it is. So I'm trying to get as close to that idea as possible by moving in what makes sense. And again, there are situations in which you have an unwise suffering moment, but the idea is not to be perfect. The idea is to keep moving forward. So just like humanity moves 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, so do you as a person, regardless of your level. It's just you're dealing with a different, okay, back to the prompt here. Okay, so the difference Okay, so twos are fluctuating. Okay, they're fluctuating in their life, right? Fives are fluctuating in their life. But this might be the difference in the graph. Is that fives fluctuate up and twos fluctuate forward. And maybe your goal is to go up or to have a more in-depth relationship with self and introspection. And the twos here, the ones, they're here. The ones are here. They're not moving. That's why they're weird. They're just going in circles. They're like ants in a death march. The ones are just going in a circle. Do, 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 do. And the threes are like this. They're coming out of the two line and they're like this. They're like, hey, is there something more? So they're still going forward, but they're just a little bit higher. And then the fours are like this. The fours are like, what the fuck? What am I doing here? 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 And then they decide to get back on track. And this is, again, in relation to not just the bubble, which we're all born into, but everything outside of that bubble, the whole universe, because humans operate here. Some of us literally believe all that matters is this. Do you imagine thinking this is all that matters when there's all of this? But why would you even know there was all of this if this is the only thing you can see? This is why I don't fault people. I'm not upset with you for being a 2 or even a 1. How can I be upset at somebody who only has this as accessible to them? This is the same thing that if you move into the 2 bubbles, why progressives have this idea about people who are trapped in their own bubble of limitation. Like conservatives and Republicans will talk this big game about expecting people to be better than their circumstance. But the reality is that people are their circumstance. And until that individual has a better relationship with self, they can't be different. That's why there's a meaning crisis. I don't care. I'm not blaming you for having this as your perception. I'm not blaming anybody. I'm just letting you know what's happening. You can do something about it when you're ready. And when you're ready, it might look like this. And when you're ready, it could look like this. And when you're ready, it could look like this. Okay? Like, it's not about blaming people or being mad at people. I mean, you can be angry as a human because you're having a biological response, but like you can't, you in a 5 framework, blaming people isn't the answer because you have to accept that this is where they are. Like, who am I to look at a person and be like, do different, be better? Yeah, I love saying it. Go to therapy, be better. But I can't, no matter how many times I say it, you're not going to do it till you want to. And that's part of the radical acceptance. No matter how much you yell it at the rooftops, they're not going to do it until they're ready. And that's what we wait for, is we wait for people to go on that journey and to reach a different level of relationship too. Now, you know, we can talk about that vegan conversation I had yesterday, which went really well. I thought it was really great. Why you become a vegan is the difference between a 2 vegan and a 5 vegan. That's what I'm looking for now. What does the 5 vegan look like versus the 2 vegan? That's what I'm wondering now, because these things are different, right? And then veganism in itself has to be something that is malleable and adaptable. That's what the difference between 5 framework is. It's always open to change with new information, period. There is no reaching a level of I figured it out. There's only a level of we continue to figure it out. The 2s want a black and white answer to the universe. Did God make us or not? Were there dinosaurs? Gays, yes or no? And I'm like, we don't know that yet. All we know is that the data we're using is bad. We need better data. And the better data is giving us answers that a lot of people don't like. And that's the problem. Why don't they like it? Because it ruins the construct of the bubble they've been existing in, that their people have been existing in for 2,000 years. Tradition is beautiful, but it's also a form of stagnation. Not in all ways, but in many. That's why we have to adapt and change tradition and modernize, but not modernize into another 2 bubble unless that's where the species goes, which, okay, it is what it is, but maybe modernize into a more introspective community, which community is also within itself a construct. It doesn't look the same way. Community, I just mean like humans in general, you know? Chat says, did you ever experience something like cosmic dread when you were first expanding your bubble understanding outward, like the discomfort of popping the huge universe bubble? Yeah, I think like that. Chat replied, that's a 4. Yeah, like that's 4 for in a big way. like in a big way. I think twos think they do it. Like sometimes you can watch like a Neil deGrasse Tyson type, which not a fan of him here, obviously. But a Neil deGrasse Tyson type might be like a two who thinks he's expanding upon the universe, but gives no 5 energy, no 4 energy. He's just a two who's like, space, am I right? But a 4 isn't like, space, am I right? They're like, the literal universe. Like everything I thought from a personal perspective, everything I thought mattered, every form of activism I was taking, everything that I was doing was always for the wrong why. The why was because I thought it would help people. I thought it was good. I thought it was what we needed. I thought it would make sense. But I realized like I'm not fulfilled here. My why feels wrong. And now my why, when I help people, when I do a little bit of, call it whatever you want, outreach activism, posting a link here and there, very casual, it's for a good reason now. Like a why that it fulfills my joy and I think actually helps people. It gets them towards a direction. But it's not about the why I thought I was doing it when I was in the bubbles. I feel like they're doing it out of retaliation and fear, which is so fair. And I'm doing it for the peace and love of humanity, which I feel like is better. But it's hard to get there because when you're in survival mode, you are moving out of fear. I really recommend doing nothing out of fear and everything because it's the right thing to do. When we do things out of fear, we run the same risk of doing something out of good intention. Good intentions, right? The road to hell is paved in good intentions. The road to hell is also paved in your fears. We want to move away from our evil and closest to our joy. And so the why we do things has to be because it's right and not because I'm afraid, but because I think it's right. Discord said, when I compare 1 to 3, I think they're similar because they don't engage with the premise in a typical way. To illustrate the difference, I think of the bridge metaphor. The 3 uses the bridge as a tool to get somewhere new. The 1 makes camp on the bridge and stays there, even when it starts showing signs of damage. They don't make any attempt to repair it. They wait for someone else to come along and fix it. Oh, okay, let's go with that. Hold on, let's play with that. Love that, Discord. Let's play with that. Okay. Brittany, I figured it out. Okay. We have a bridge. Okay. Here's the 1 on the bridge. Here's the 4 because the 5 exists outside the bridge. Oh, hold on. Okay. So the 1 notices that the bridge is starting to crumble. Okay. It's starting to break. It's starting to become uninhabitable. The 2 notices it and attempts to build it up. Okay. But it's breaking. So maybe they adapt a little bit more, but maybe they go up instead of across. But maybe the 3 goes across and goes, well, what could be over there? But then the 3 might get too scared because they can't see. So they go back to the 2s and they go up with them. They build up. Because the 3s don't know that there's a 4. They just think there is. But they don't know. So usually they go back to the comfort of the 2 bubble. They usually go back. I have a 3 who went back to a 2. So now they're just a 2 again. They're not a 3 anymore. Because they stopped being curious. They stopped contemplating what's beyond the wall. Once you stop contemplating as a 3, what's beyond, you're back to a 2. And you usually pick a bubble, and that's where you exist in, right? And there's nothing wrong with that because you're just animals on a planet anyway. So I don't know why you're thinking about it too hard. But if you notice you're lacking joy, your answer could be in a 2 bubble because there are joyful 2s. Or it might be something else. Now, the difference between 2 joy and 5 joy, 2 joy is finding joy in relation to the self, everything outside the self in relation to the bubble, limited by the bubble. So you can be a really joyful Muslim as an example. Okay, shout out to our Muslims who are finishing up Ramadan here. Okay, you can be a really joyful, dedicated, loving Muslim person whose whole identity exists within the construct of the bubble, right? Nothing wrong with that. Okay, let's build a little boop. Okay, so you're, this is your little Muslim bubble. You're really happy. You have great meaning. Oop. Let's say this is outside of the bubble. Okay, so you're here. You're a happy Muslim person. Everything's vibing. And then within the Muslim bubble alone, it's the same construct of the 2 bubbles. There's these Muslims here having this relationship with the religion. There's these ones here who are having this relationship, and then there's the joyful ones up here who are having this relationship. Now, unlike the original construct for the twos, 2As are not having a joyful relationship. Ironically enough, you could be a 2B who's having a joyful relationship with the bubbles. So then the question is, can 2As find joy within the bubble? I don't know. They don't seem like it. So there's multiple layers, right? There's what you're doing with the levels is you're looking at it in categories once again. Introspection in relation to the bubble. Okay, let's see if I can figure this out. With paint, it's going to be messy because it's not very clear. In relation to self. So the bubble is outside the self. In relation to joy. Okay, so if you're, this is hard to explain because it's going to change for each one. But if you're a 2A, you have the realization that like, okay, we're all in a bubble and nothing matters. So I'm going to be the top of this bubble. Maybe even at the expense of myself and at the expense of my joy. Or maybe they think, okay, I'm in this bubble and there's nothing that matters. So I'm going to get to know myself better and find joy in community service. Okay, maybe that's something, right? Maybe that's something. There's something here, though, that can differ person to person. Because if a 2A is having a deep relationship with the self and thinking about joy, why wouldn't they just become a 3? That's the question. So my theory is that the 2As get stuck focusing on how to be the top of their bubble. We're at the expense of self and at the expense of joy. So do you guys see Jeff Bezos' transformation from the nerdy guy to like the muscular daddy? I don't know if that's who he is. Mark Zuckerberg with his gold chain. Is that your joy, dude? I don't know. He doesn't look like it, but what do I know? I think billionaires move out of fear. I think they have like really sad existences, but it is just sad because that's how I perceive it. I don't know that it is, right? So if you have a 5 at okay, so like a 5. Oh, no. Let's do this. Okay, let's just do this with all of them. Ones see the bubbles. They don't know where they belong, so they can never even fathom their joy. Okay, right? 2s see the bubbles and work their hardest to have different levels of relationship with the bubbles. Okay? And they think this is the end. A lot of them. Or they get trapped here or find their joy here through religion and charity, right? So if we go back to the Muslim example, you can be a really peaceful Muslim who's like in top tier joy within this bubble. But the moment they left the bubble and popped it, they would be miserable again. So another M word, but miserable instead of Muslim. Because the problem is the joy only exists in relation to the Muslim bubble. So if the Muslim's really, really happy, really joyful, because they have a relationship to self and the bubble, the moment the bubble pops, and God forbid they lose their relationship with Islam and they're like, oh my God, is like God not real? Then they're lost again. The meaning of self, the groundingness isn't there because their reality was grounded in that particular perception of life, which is why they can be joyful within that perception, though limited. But if they popped it, then they run that risk. When you get to 5, there's no risk of popping a bubble. Nothing bad can happen to you because everything that's true is just is. I'm not here to fight the truth. I'm here to accept it. So it's not my job to be angry at what's true versus like a 2 bubble, okay? A 2 bubble says this thing in my bubble is what's true and that's all that can be true. So myself and my joy is always related to the bubble, right? Okay. So a 3 goes, I'm in a bubble. I don't know. I think I know my sense of self. I don't know if I'll ever be joyful, but I'm comfortable. I'm going to stay in the bubble. Okay. Or 3 goes, this bubble, I'm not fitting into it and I can't figure out my joy. Maybe there's more. And they hop into the 4. Okay. The 4 goes, wait, if this bubble I was originally in is not what I thought it was, wait, are there any bubbles that are what I thought it was? Are there any bubbles that are real? Like if you're a religious person and you come out of religion into atheism, you're like, holy fuck, I thought God was real. He's not real? Wait, what else isn't real? And the 4 realizes nothing. Nothing is real. But when I say nothing is real, I don't mean it like a 2. When a 2 thinks nothing is real, they're like, the Matrix, we're code, we're simulations. That's not what I mean by real. I mean, nothing is real because nothing that you have to put a perception on to make it real is necessary for what is. It either is or isn't. And that is specific. So a God has less chances of being real than gender fluidity because gender fluidity just is. It's an experience. God has to exist outside of yourself to be real. It exists in a separate consciousness. Now you have to prove God separate from yourself, outside of yourself, and tangible. Gender doesn't have to be tangible to be real. It's an experience. Experiences are real. Then the question is, well, how do I know I'm having a real experience? This is another level of making sure you understand your brain, your mind, and your consciousness. So the realness is where we're all getting stuck. What's truth? What's real? Nothing and everything. Life is tiny contradictions, right? Okay, going back to there. Hold on. Okay. So life is like these tiny little contradictions. So a 5 goes, oh man, okay, we all live in bubbles because bubbles are perception. So now I need to know, how do I make my own bubble? That's usually what 5s do. We make our own bubbles. And now our joy in ourself, we live in this bubble. Okay? But now let me make this up for you. Hold on. Okay. So now if you're a 5, okay, hold on. Let me think about how to make this. Okay, so there's 2 bubbles. Okay, these are the 2s. And the 2s encompass the 3s. And obviously the 5, everybody lives in the 2 bubbles because everyone lives on Earth. Let's use, okay, so stay with me here. Everyone lives, no, that's the wrong way to phrase it. Hold on. I got this. Hold on. This is why we do this. This is live, folks. Okay. Okay. This is, hold on. Okay, this is planet Earth. Okay, Earth. Okay, and we all live here, 1 through 5. Okay, we all live here on Earth. Okay, we live in this physical place. Okay, we don't necessarily always exist there because some of us are in space sometimes, but like, you know what I mean. We live in Earth. We live on Earth. Okay, I'm trying to simplify this. Okay. I'm trying to think of how to do this without confusing everybody. This isn't going to be totally literal, so stay with me here. Okay, the 2 thinks this is the only bubble. Okay, this is the only bubble that exists. But the 5 knows within Earth itself, there's all these bubbles. Okay, these are bubbles. Okay, the 5 knows there's all of these bubbles. And I think 2s know it, they just don't embody it. Like logically, the reason I use the word bubble is because 2s use the word bubbles. They just think they're using it always as an insult. Oh, that person's in a bubble. We're all in bubbles. Okay, we're all in bubbles. So the 2 thinks Earth is like this bubble and you have to be down to earth. You have to live on planet Earth, right? You know all these sayings you hear? Okay, but the 5 knows there's all these bubbles within this physical bubble we live in. And so it's a matter of which one do you think is correct and then which one do you exist in? There's the one there's 3 ways to think of bubbles, guys. There's the one you physically live in, like I live in the Croatia bubble right now. The one you're from, I'm from the American bubble, so I have that knowledge. I'm an American. But internally, I also have, or no, externally, I also have this physical home bubble I've created with my partner. And internally, we have the thought bubble of what we think about the universe, what we think about life, this shared value. This is our belief bubble, right? And then we have the relationship to self bubble, right? All of it is perception. I'm explaining bubble means perception. And perception is what we think is reality. But I want to argue that your perception can change and therefore reality changes. So I'm a person who was religious. Then I realized God might not be real. It changed my perception. And now I move through the earth differently, right? So if you're a 5, okay, so now we have all these like 2 bubbles that are kind of like planets, right? Like all these great 2 bubbles. They're so interesting. Okay. Then you have the 5 who made their bubble. This is the 5 bubble that you make. We were 5. Okay. And then it's like traveling. out of country. Okay, so the fives live within Earth. So we all live, this is Earth, this is big round Earth. We all live on Earth. Wow, it's a very bad Earth, but stay with me here. We all live in Earth. But the fives live in their own five bubbles because like it's about the relationship to self. And then when I want, when you want, you can jump into other people's bubbles. Like, oh, I'm going to go hang out with the vegans. Oh, I'm going to go hang out with the Muslims. Oh, I'm going to go hang out with the conservatives. I'm going to go hang out with the tankies. I'm going to go hang out with the gays. Hey, the gays are different though, because the gays can be everywhere. Gays can be fives or twos or you know what I mean. But belief systems that are limited and predicated on prescription and thinking they're the best, those are the ones that are going to be twos. If you can make a prescription for your model of believing, that's a two. Twos make prescriptions. Fives don't make prescriptions. Okay? But you can go join them and be like, what up, girls? And hang out and have a great time. And then when you get exhausted and your spoons are out, you go back to your bubble and chill. And then when you're ready, you travel back out and you discover new bubbles. Oh, look, this bubble and this bubble I never heard of, and this bubble I never heard of, and this bubble and this bubble. And then it's just never ending. Look, it's never ending. There is a never ending amount of perception. And every new perception is just a bunch of people agreeing on the said perception. That's what we make community out of. Community is rooted in shared perception. And because we share this perception, we create a community. I'm a queer person. I signal to the universe, I want to invite queer people into my space and only people that are very like pro-queer into my space, regardless of who you are, right? I do this because I'm signaling to the two bubbles because in a five framework, why would I need to signal? If we were all fives, I wouldn't have to signal queerness because fives wouldn't be trying to discriminate or subjugate the queers. I only have to do this because the two frameworks allow people's shared perception to agree that homophobia is reasonable. So I have to add in my voice, which is my form of choice. I choose this to, even at the detriment of myself, right? Do you know in Europe, they're putting out warnings not to travel to America if you're queer? Germany's already put out warnings to their citizens. Do not go to America if you think you could get stopped at the border. They're stopping people at the border, right? So it's one of those things where they're stopping people for a lot of reasons. Illegal status. I mean, people from Canada are getting arrested. It's like a whole thing that's happening, right? So there's a warning. But why do these things even exist in the first place? Because a group of people created a perception that they share that allows them to feel justified in their action, right? So again, I can't make a prescription to you. Even if I said to you, become a five, you can't do it. It has to be an embodied and thoughtful experience. You have to feel it. It has to make sense. You have to be there. And like with everything else, you can't just pretend you're a Christian. That's why a lot of Christian and Muslims look like grifters, because you can tell they're not having an embodied experience. And even moving off that vegan conversation we had yesterday, I'm not having the embodied experience, but I might one day. In the same way that when I realized like God wasn't real, I changed, like it physically felt different, right? So that's the difference. So I can't just be like, be a five. Whoop, whoop. Like, okay, you remember with the, yesterday, somebody in chat was like, oh, do you think like racism is a journey? Yes. Because if it wasn't, I could just be like, hey, don't be a racist. And the racist is like, oh, I never thought about that. Like, what are you thinking? Yeah. It's a journey. Because humans are little biological creatures born into environments that instill perceptions into their brains. You have to deconstruct the perception you were given as fact. Now, the question is, once you deconstruct, what is left? Only the chance at discovery. The humility of a five is to realize we do not know what we think we know. That we know less than 1% of the world's knowledge, but everything that we need to know is out there. It's just a matter of discovering it. Because when we discover things right now, we're discovering ego and legacy and fame and materialism. We're not discovering truth. We're discovering status. Human beings in their evolutionary journey are right now focused on status. They haven't, as a collective, moved past status. So individuals who are ready to move past status, yeah, they can go on individual introspection journeys. But you can't ask people who are still in this form of their life where they're like, I just need a car, I need to go to school, I need the best shoes, I need to look this way. Like, I get it. Right? You have to operate within the bubbles. So even I and you, we have to operate within the bubbles, a signal accordingly based off the game we're playing. But it doesn't mean that that's the game we're playing when we shut off the computer or go home from work. The life I live outside of my work, the life I live outside of interacting with conservatives or homophobes, that's a different life. When I say like I'm at home anime style vibing, you know what I mean? Like that's a different life. We're having different conversations. Often the conversations are, how do you signal to the appropriate two bubbles? Because I do want to invite the right kinds of people into my orbit. But realistically, like we're always going to have to interact with people that are having a different relationship with their journey of perception. If human beings were perfect, if they were this great, amazing species, I could say, stop being mean and it would work. Stop being racist. Stop raping people. Stop murdering people. Stop promoting a genocide. Stop justifying a genocide. And it should be enough. But it's not enough. Because that's just not how we work as people. And when you radically accept that humans are going to human, everything else falls into place. Now, again, I'm not making a prescription that you should be a 5 because I don't think it's up to me or you. I think it is up to timing, the journey, your relationship with self. I just don't think you can force your way into it. And then some people, look, over the years, I've had people be like, I think I'm a 4, I think I'm a 5, I think I'm this. But that's like the first step to really deconstructing what it even means to be that. And why do you think you're that? And why does it matter if you're that? What does it matter if you're a 5? Why should it matter? That's the first question you should ask yourself. If you're like, ooh, the levels are interesting and I want to be a 5, why does it matter if you're a 5? Like, I would start there, That says the body you're born into is a type of bubble of its own that shapes your experiences and how you relate to reality and yourself. Amen. At 1,000%. 1,000%. Yeah. 1,000%. Okay, let me see. Any questions, comments? Let's see. Prescriptions being telling people the right way to live. Yeah, prescriptions are made when you like Elle said yesterday on stream, she wants to make a prescription. She wants people to be vegan. She wants me to be vegan. Like she is making the prescription, which is valid. I'm glad she's self-aware about it. I think a lot of people try to pretend they're not making prescriptions and then they are, but I'm just genuinely not interested in making a prescription. I want people to do what's right. And I'm not the arbiter of to make a prescription is to put myself in a position where I think I know what's right. I know what I think is right. And I'm telling you that this is what I've discovered. Like example, I've gone off dairy and my fibromyalgia is doing fabulously. I'm at a solid 2 level of pain. I feel really good because no pain is not an option. So if I ever felt no pain, that'd be great, but I'm not looking at that, right? To make a prescription would then just say, guys, you have to go off dairy if you don't want to feel pain from fibromyalgia. You have got to, or if you want to feel minimal pain, go off dairy. That's a prescription. I'm not going to tell you to go off dairy because I don't know that it's true. I just know that it worked for me, which is not the same thing of knowing something is true. Just because it worked for you doesn't make it true. It only makes it true through your perception, your biological experience, your particular vessel, your body. So when I make a prescription, which I don't do for that reason, it's because I can't imagine putting myself at the top of the food chain in that sense and saying like, I know what's good for 8 billion people. Like for Elle to say, which is valid and normal, I think everyone should be vegan, is to say that I think I know what's right for 8 billion people. And I just don't think that highly of myself. I think I'm very smart and capable, but I think I have like too much humility, to be honest, because like the ego I would have to have on me to go back to that Brittany, I already deconstructed that ego. The same ego I had when I was making prescriptions in my 20s, I don't do that anymore because it just contradicts all the work that I'm working on to deconstruct that ego. There's nothing wrong with the fact that people are on that journey, but I can't go back to being that person because I'm not her anymore. But I used to make prescriptions. I just don't do it anymore. I just say what it is. So as an example, when I'm saying you're homophobic or transphobic, I'm not making a prescription. I'm stating a category, a fact, like a fact within the construct. Within the construct of what transphobia is, you are transphobic because you did X action. But if you look at a different construct, maybe you're not transphobic. That's why we argue, is it transphobic or not transphobic? Depends. Which construct are we using to categorize this action? right? That's why I say, like, when I suffer from internalized misogyny, I'm appropriately categorizing my own flaw with like bubbles that I have to deconstruct that I've dealt with since I was born. Like I was born into a pretty misogynistic bubble, a very confusing misogynistic bubble because like all the women worked, all the people were there, but it was still misogynistic. Even though if you ask the people within the bubble, like, hey, are you misogynist? They're like, what? No? What? They would say no. But according to my construct of misogyny, I would say I grew up in a pretty misogynistic bubble. You know? Now, this goes back to functionality and practicality. The greatest thing about the levels is that I do think in ways that allows you to find your place in the universe and be more practical. So like, you don't have to invite transphobes to your barbecue or the get together or whatever, right? Like they don't have to be invited into your home. If you want to make peace in a sense and give people a loving space to be transphobic, not to promote their transphobia, but to love them as a consciousness, that's also an option, right? Like I have a very transphobic, homophobic family. I love them. And sometimes I give them space in my life and sometimes I don't. Just depends on the mood because I get to choose. It's my bubble. It's my life. I love them. If I'm visiting them, I'm in their bubble. I'm no longer in my bubble. So I have to pay attention to that. But like if, you know, they're like, hey, can I come to your house? I'm like, I don't know. My bubble's kind of my sacred space. I don't know if I can open my home to you right now. I don't know if that's an option for me right now, but it might be in the future. You know, maybe in the future I can open up my home to you. It's this idea that like you have so much power in your life, but usually the bubble will encourage you or pressure you into sort of crossing those boundaries, being dishonest, feeling fake even, because it relies on you to uplift and confirm their perception. So as an example, like if I go home to my parents' house, I dress more modestly and I don't cuss because in their bubble, they don't like that stuff. Okay. But if you come into Brittany's bubble, like I don't care how you dress and you can certainly cuss. Example, my parents would not come to my house if I had nude art all over the walls. They wouldn't come into my house because it'd be offensive to their God. But I'm not going to take down the wall on my art so they can come over. But I would in the past, and I do not regret this because there were circumstances where it made sense, made those accommodations for people, right? I have made those accommodations for people. And I could make those accommodations for a lot of people for a lot of reasons, right? Like I'm pretty open, but not always. And there's nothing wrong with not always being open to it. So like if I have a vegan friend over and they're really disgusted at meat in the house and I have hanging animals, I might take those down. I don't have any, but I might take those down. But then maybe some days I'm like, I can't take them down today, bro. Let's just meet outside the apartment. I'm just giving examples. I don't have hanging meat in the house. But there's a way we make accommodations for people that makes sense. And in some way, it's about radically accepting where we are in journeys and then what the future looks like. You know, again, you don't have to make space for people in your life if you don't want to. Like, if you don't want to talk to your racist grandma, tell her grandma, you know, with peace and love, bye. That's your decision. But if you want to make space for your racist grandma in a way to show her compassion as a consciousness, I think that's valid as well. You know, I think sometimes in bubbles, there's like a demand we make on people that's just like inappropriate, whoever it is. There's just like, we're always demanding. And a part of it is validation seeking. We want to be validated. What do you mean you're not going to talk to me? You think I'm racist because I voted for Trump? What do you mean? That's not me. I'm doing a mimic. You know, I'm playing a character. But it's like, what do you mean you're not going to like invite me over? What, you think I'm a racist because I voted for a racist? Like, what are you talking about? I can't believe you see me that way. How could you see me that way? And instead of asking yourself, like, how could people see me this way? You go, I can't believe your leftist propaganda convinced you I'm racist. I watched another video this morning on Ethan Klein. And I just keep thinking like, man, I've never seen a person in a bubble so strong be on this like level of YouTube in the way that he's doing it. But it isn't unique to Ethan. Ethan's not doing anything unique to him. But I did see a video this morning that made me think like, it's not just Ethan. It's the bubble. It's his crew. It's his wife. It's his family. Like it's his lawyers. Like Ethan isn't alone. We're putting a lot of the responsibility on Ethan, but it's the whole bubble. And no one's going to get through to this bubble. No matter how much you show Ethan how much he got wrong in his video, he'll never see it unless he has the bubble pop. But to have the bubble pop would require a level of humility that most people aren't going to have. It's too hurtful to the pride. It's too hurtful to your pride, to your ego, you know? It's just too much, you know? Okay, now, questions, comments. Chad says those examples feel like you make accommodations for everyone, but no one makes accommodations for you. Do you feel like that's unfair? If you find yourself in a position in which you feel like you're not getting the right energy back, you can recontextualize that friendship and end it or put down boundaries. I don't stop being kind because people aren't kind to me. I might stop going out of my way if I feel like I'm not getting the right amount of symbiosis in return. Like we're not doing it correctly, but also it's not about them, it's about me. If I keep giving and nobody gives back, that's on nobody but me. That's not on them. Because I don't tell people what to do. Either they do it because it's right, or we have a conversation and they say, I don't want to do it. But it's not about what they do. It's about what I do. It's not about like what's fair, because fair is a construct. But if within my construct, I say, oh, that's not fair to me, then that's a good reason to put down that boundary. So, you know, it could be unfair, but just stop doing it. You know what I mean? But that's the problem. They will guilt you. People can make you feel bad. People can say like, well, I can't just stop doing it. They won't talk to me again. Stop doing it. Like, stop doing it. That's the greatest strength you have, is to tell people, I love you. When it works out, we'll see each other. Otherwise, like, we might not see each other forever. We might die without seeing each other again, because it just might be the way life goes, you know? Okay, repeat question, so please ignore if annoying. Thank you for that. But are there some 2 bubbles that can lead to 5? Like a Buddhist monk who takes a vow of silence and spends years in contemplation? Or are the 2 bubbles too weighed down by human constructs? Great question. Let's do, okay. So, that's a great question. You know, I love a monk who meditates in the mountains, right? Love a monk who takes a vow of silence. So, okay. We're going to get it. Okay. So, you have the 2s. Meditating monks exist in this bubble. They exist in the 2 bubble. Okay? You can meditate for 100 years and never leave a 2 bubble. Because meditation is a construct of the 2s. Meditation is the construct of where our brains have taken us as an option. 2s meditate all the time. Religious people meditate all the time. Meditation isn't what makes you introspective. Introspection is. Introspection is the action. So if you're a monk who meditates all day, but you're not introspecting, because there are forms of meditation where you can meditate through the word of God, you can meditate through exercise, if you're not extrospecting, then there's no reason for you to become more introspective. There's this Catholic, like there's so many different Catholic groups where the nuns or priests take like a vow of silence, a vow of like they become cloisters, and they live away from society forever. None of them are becoming 5s, right? Because their meditation, their vow of silence is about the construct of the bubble. It's in relation to the bubble. So it doesn't penetrate outside the bubble. So they're here, but they need to go out. They need to pop the bubble. Okay? They need to create a part of the bubble that opens up and pops, and then they slip out of it. They go out of the bubble. But how do they go out of the bubble if the premise of their meditation exists within the construct of the 2 bubble? So the reason I love to meditate is that it's a tool, but how you use it is up to you and the limitations of your bubble. So then it's not about whether or not you meditate or take a vow of silence. It's whether or not you utilize those tools to ask yourself, who am I in relation to me and in relation to everything outside of me? And then you expand outside of the 2 bubbles. Not just this place on earth, not just this place where my family lives, but what if I thought, who was I in relation to the whole universe? And what if I really explored that in the most curious of ways. You know? Chess says, I think we're talking about different forms of meditation. Meditation originally is a direct method to get out of the bubble. No. Those other methods would be preparations for meditation, for Buddhists at least. I don't know the construct of the Buddhist bubble enough to know what the limit, it's a construct. Meditation is a construct. Enlightenment is a construct, right? So all of these words mean nothing to me because they're limited on the basis of the bubble construct. So they only mean what we mean in this conversation. Meditation has become a great many things. And many people use meditation in different forms of meditation for a lot of different purposes. So I don't know the rules of the Buddhist bubble. I don't know what the rules are in that bubble to know like how to jump into it and say like, what is a meditation to them? Because like it doesn't exist that way throughout the bubbles. Like when I try to think about what is, I think about all of them together, not all of them specific. Because just to even say, well, that's not what meditation is this. Yes, because it's within that framework of the bubble. You know? Getting out of the bubble is a construct like enlightenment is. Yes. But the bubble is just a perception change. It's not an end goal. So everything is a bubble, right? So it's not about what really is or what really isn't, you know? It's about what could be, you know? Pat says, I think my question is more about how you decouple the tools of two bubbles and the bubble. And if there are bubbles more capable of that. Oh, you guys are talking to each other. My bad. Let me see. 4s are aware of, but not at peace with it. So 2s are somewhat or subconsciously aware of it. Yeah, I think like it's a both experience. So like 4s logically get it, but 5s have like an no. 4s logically get it and they have an embodiment shift, but they're not fully embodied in the experience until they're like at peace. It's like they had the shift, everything changed, but they don't like the answer. Not always, but a lot of the time, because it should be like fundamentally shocking to you that everything we're doing is predicated on the limitations of us as a species. All of us, yourself included. You, regardless if you're a 5 or a 2, have got to include yourself in the limitations of humans as a species. You do not transcend the limitations. You are just as susceptible to those limitations as 2s. You're just coming from a different perspective. So when I say like 5s are doing this and 2s are doing this, 5s are doing what they can within their limitations just from a different perspective. And it's a perspective that encompasses all of the possibilities. 2s are predicating their reality on the limitations of possibilities based off the bubble construct. It's limited. By definition, 2s have got to limit reality. They have to limit option. We're literally fighting over pronouns and names right now because there's like a limitation that humans so desire. They want to limit how we have a chance to exist in the world because they're like, for some reason, 2s just like rely on that. And I think it comes from our evolution. I think like it comes from their need to survive. And so they're having like kind of a caveman biological response in a sense, but it's a little elevated. So maybe like 2Cs are kind of like cavemen in a sense, but so like all of them could have it. And all of us do have it. I have it. I can feel my monkey brain doing its monkey brain stuff sometimes. I'm like, oh, there's my monkey brain. And like I can feel it. The fact that I can feel it and acknowledge it is the point. The fact that I can say, oh, that's my monkey brain. Wait, let me dial this in. Versus other people that are like, I can't escape it. I'm stressed about the world. I need these people to die so my family lives. I need these things to happen. I feel like I'm suffocating under the weight of the... Whoa, dude. Breathe, bro. I get it. I've been there. I've suffocated. I learned to not suffocate anymore. It's not that I don't feel pain. It's not that I don't get worried, but I don't suffocate under the weight of the world anymore. And the world is suffocating under the weight of itself. You are basically sitting on it yourself. Stop sitting on yourself. Stop hitting yourself. Stop hitting yourself. Stop hitting yourself. And the world is like, no. And I'm like, stop hitting yourself. Like, stop hitting yourself. Stop hitting yourself. And they're not there yet. Like, they're not there yet, you know? But it's not a matter of getting there. Because we are these biological creatures. It's a matter of when or how or if the planet dies, I don't know. So again, being a 5 isn't the end all be all. It's just the next part of the journey. It's like the next part of the where we could go. But we're always so stuck on the twos. The twos are the prominent, so they're the main character. And so you're fighting against those bubbles, those expectations. You know? Chet says insert meme of the dog sitting in the house fire. This is fine. That's cope. That's a 2 who's coping with the pain. A 5 isn't in the house. Walk out of the house. Walk out of the house. You don't have to stay there. Go vibe in an anime flower field. Even if it's just internally. Like, don't sit in the house that's on fire. Get out. Because the house that's on fire is like, it's you. Like that's why I say like this always comes down to us. We are a reflection of the world en masse. Like you don't like the state of the world. That's you. Like that's you. We are each other. When I look at people and I get frustrated with them, I get frustrated with them for being me, for being limited and human, for being unable to just get it or do the right thing. It is so hard to be a good person in a world where we don't even know what that means because we don't even know what it means to be alive. We don't even know what we're doing here, except for the twos that created the construct to explain what we're doing here through myth and lore. Myth and lore. You know? How do you, Chet says, how do you differentiate between cope and acceptance? Well, cope is temporary. Great question. Cope is temporary. It's a shield. So you're a 2. So, okay, look, 1's here. Okay, this is their perception option. Okay, 2's are here. And when 2's are coping, they're like, yo, it's fine, bro. We got this. It's great. Yo, vibes, bro. No, we're good. We're good, bro. It's like they give themselves a shield. Not that they go back to 1, but like they shield themselves. And acceptance is doing this. Damn, bro. That's wild. Damn. Acceptance is not being afraid. Acceptance is allowing it to be what it is. I don't have to shield myself. I just have to accept it. I accept that I can get stressed from the news, and I can also accept that it's happening. The stress, though, changes. Even your relationship with stress will change. It will be far different than it ever is, even as a joyful 2. Joyful 2s experience a different relationship with stress, right? And joyful 2s just means that they have a relationship with themselves and everything outside of themselves with the limitations of the bubble. So like you can be a joyful 2 who's like bigoted because their joy is predicated on being in like sync with the bubble that they live in, which is bigoted. So it's not a recommendation, right? And it's limited. And I think it's sort of a cope joy, but it could still be joy. But I think it's kind of a cope joy. You know what I mean? But it's in relation to the bubble. And that joy is a cope joy in a sense because any change to that bubble, any perception shift, and now you don't know what you're doing anymore. There is nothing that could happen to me in life in my theory, this is my theory, that could rock me to my core the way I've been rocked to my core in my past. Because when I was rocked to my core and my life changed, it was because something happened that I didn't think was possible. Versus now, whatever is. So who am I to allow what could have been to have shocked me if it is? Like what could happen in my life that would make me go, oh, I didn't think that was possible. What do you mean? It's all possible. All things are possible that are possible. That's how I look at life now. And that's like the fundamental change. And that's why it's easier for me. Like it's easier for me to let go of like envy or jealousy or any of those things. Like I don't have to worry. To be fair, I never really worried with those things. Let me give something I did worry about. Okay, I always used to worry about like my family dying. I used to be terrified at the idea that my family would die. Because I didn't know where I belonged if I wasn't with my family. And then I realized, like I exist outside of them. I exist because of them, but I also exist outside of them. And this is life. Your family will die. Everybody will die. And there's something really beautiful about that. I think this is why our relationship with death is also so skewed, Because you can have a good relationship with death, but in relation to the self, this is different. So like, I wasn't afraid of me dying. I wasn't even afraid of my family dying. I was afraid of everybody I ever loved dying, which is different. I wasn't afraid of one person dying or 10 people dying over a lifetime. I was afraid of somebody snapping a finger and every single person I've ever known or loved died in front of me right away. Boom, all dead. Because my life at some point in my life was predicated on my social circles, how I was existing within my family, how I existed within my religion, how I existed within my friend groups. And I realized I didn't have a relationship with myself enough to rely on myself if that ever happened, even though it technically wouldn't. I mean, who knows, right? A nuclear bomb could hit and hit all my family members for some perfect reason, and now I'm left alone. But once I had a good relationship with myself, even the thought of that was like, oh yeah. You know, it is what it is. Not in like a dismissive way, but in an acceptance way. I don't need to dismiss reality to mourn and accept, but it doesn't need to destroy me either. We are often destroyed. Our minds can only handle so much. And you're not at fault for your mind being destroyed because you were put in a circumstance in which it was too much. I am not blaming anybody. I have been there where I think I'm ready, I'm prepared, something bad happens, and I did not react the way that I had trained myself to. There's nothing wrong with being a biological creature, having a brain that maybe, you know, moves into an instinctual mode of protection that isn't what you trained for, wasn't what you thought would happen. You're not at fault for being a person. I'm just letting you know as we move through life and life gives us these opportunities, we can have a different relationship with the perception of those situations. So instead of blaming yourself for not acting the way you were trained, comfort yourself in knowing that you lived another day to have a better relationship with yourself. Knowing that you did exactly what made sense in the moment. We all do what we think makes sense, even when we're very bad people. The dilemma is asking ourselves, now that we're done with this, is there a way to make sense in a better way? And that means we have to admit that we weren't doing good enough before. Because we create this lore that eventually I'll be old, and eventually I'll be wise, and eventually I'll know all the answers. But just like children who realize their parents don't have all the answers, we too as adults, as educators, as scientists, as leaders, have got to accept that we don't have all the answers. And this is not what's normal. It is not normal to get on the internet, to get in a book, to be a leader and say, I don't have all the answers. They want to hear you say, I have all the answers. And the they is people. That's why the world is a reflection of us as a whole. Because we want people to convince us they have the answers instead of being comforted in the fact that we don't. But we have some pretty good answers. We're just still learning. But, you know. Okay, questions, comments, ideas. So just to summarize it again, as we wait for comments or if you guys have anything to share. The levels are about, it's a tool for you to categorize how you're having a relationship with self and everything outside of yourself. And the journey is singular and only has to do with you, but you are never not impacted by your environment. And therefore, your relationship to the bubbles can dictate your relationship to your own journey. So the body you live in, the mind you have, the label people diagnose you with, the political party you're associated with, your family you're born into, the physical environment you're born into, all of these things will play a role with how you see yourself in relation to yourself and in relation to everything outside yourself, okay? So who am I as I sit in my apartment and look at this hand that like apparently is supposed to tell people about me? What does this skin color mean? And what does this like finger shape mean? And what does this face mean? And what is this? How important is this thing? And why do people think it is so important? What is so significant about this thing? Well, it's how we have a relationship to it. Why do some of us have a particular relationship to this and not? I was thinking about the gaming communities today because I was listening to a story about them and how a lot of gamer bros will say, we don't even care about race or gender. You guys make it all about race and gender, but then refuse to play a game with a black main character or a woman main character. When people say things, they don't mean it when they don't know what they're saying. If you didn't care about gender or race, then why would you just play the game? Because they do care. But they can't admit it to themselves that they care. They don't understand why that matters. Now, we know why minorities care about representation. Because psychologically speaking, it does a great thing for the mind to see itself represented in front of you. It's a great learning tool. It's very important to see representation. It's very key, right? I dated a white guy for a while, and it was a journey. Not the greatest person, so not a good example, just a singular person with a collectivist mindset of white men problems, okay? And one time we had gone and seen a movie. I've told this story before, but I always forget the name of the movie. It's Professor So-and-so's School of Gifted Children, so-and-so. It's based off a book. We go and see this movie, and before we had seen the movie, we had been arguing about representation in media. This is like a very old conversation from many, many years ago. And whenever that movie was in theaters, that's what I was having this conversation. And I was like, we need representation in media so people can look at a screen and identify with themselves. And he was in the gamer boy bubble. And he was like, what does it matter? Like, just make a good movie, make an original story. You've heard all the talking points. We get out of the movie and he goes, man, I really love that movie. I really feel like I saw myself represented on screen. Man, that made me feel so seen. And then I look at him and I was like, yeah, it's nice, right? Seeing yourself on screen. And he was like, oh, damn, you're right. Yeah, you're right. I guess representation does matter. And I was like, yeah. But like, it was so beautifully like ironic that we had the conversation and then we see this movie and but until I pointed it out, it didn't even click. Like it still hadn't clicked in his head on his own. He needed me to say, yes, seeing yourself on screen does matter. So we do care. Like we do care about the experience we have on Earth. We do care. And it's okay to care. There's nothing wrong with caring. But remember that the road to hell is paved in your good intentions. So care responsibly. And remember that there is a wise way to care about the world and an unwise way. Same with suffering. There are wise ways to suffer and unwise ways to suffer. And we often choose the unwise way of suffering because honestly, we're kind of raised to. And it's the easiest, most instinctual default. It's our caveman brain going like, this is the solution. I know it sounds good, but it might not be the solution you're really looking for. Okay, so the levels, once again, you should not feel superior if you're a 5. You should not feel without hope if you're a 1. 1s can be 5s. Okay, you can't be a 5 who goes to a 1. You can be a 5 who goes into a coma. Right? But, you know, if you're a 5 and this is your framework and you've radically accepted it, you can't go backwards. You can only ever be more curious and open-minded. I understand Alzheimer's and dementia, all these things can play a role. Mental health can play a role. And absolutely. But if you're operating within the 5 framework, then this should fundamentally change you as a person. You should really feel like you're understanding something about the possibility of what it means to exist in a way that it would be so weird to try to be a 2 again. It would just be so weird. Right? It just wouldn't even make sense, right? Chad says, is it wise to protest? I think it can be very wise to protest. I think it can also be very unwise. But within the constructs of the 2s, protest often is a very wise way to express yourself. I don't know if you guys are paying attention, but Serbia is doing this like 1 million man protest right now. And students started it. And it's kind of crazy, but it's working. Like protests can work. You know, it just depends on how you have that protest. Protests are numbers. So protests are kind of like perceptions of groups of people agreeing on that perception. That's why protests work, because it's all these people coming together saying, yes, we share this perspective. And it can go bad or good depending on, you know, where your values are. But it's a good form of expression within the 2 model, for sure. Again, 5s wouldn't be protesting for 5s, but we live in a 2 world. We have to protest. Right? Like if we're in a 2 world and 2s are the majority, then protesting makes sense because 2s get protesting. They understand it. If we're in a world of 5s, which is impossible, nobody would be protesting. Because we'd be vibing. We'd be vibing. What are you protesting for? Just do it. You know what are you protesting for? You know? Chet says, is there a piece of media that shows the journey from 2 to 5 in a clear way? There's no such thing as explaining something in a clear way to all people. So I have movies I really like. I have movies that I think express it. I mean, you could watch Wicked and find the levels there, which I am working on that video for members. I'm going to explain Wicked through the 2 models of levels, literally and figuratively, because literally Elphaba goes on a different journey than what she technically metaphorically goes on. But I'm going to show you the difference on that video. Starting in April, I'm going to have time to make more content because I'm, having my weekends open up for me, which is really great. But again, I'm talking about a very specific framework. So even if I pick a media, it might not be the right framework. And it might not translate what I'm saying. Like, you know what I'm saying? You know how Elle was talking to me yesterday and she explained veganism as a philosophy and it clicked in my brain like, oh, I got it. But I didn't get it before. Even my brain is limited by how people explain things to me. I'm not going to get it just because they explained it to me. I have to get it in the way that my brain hears it because I'm a limited biological creature. I have to do all the translating. Like when I listen to people talk, I go, okay, translate. When they say this word, they mean this word. When they say this word, they mean this word. Okay, when they say this word, they mean this word. Because words mean different things to different bubbles. Language is complex and not universal. It is unique and different. Every person uses words differently. So every person that talks, we have to like, okay, you mean it like this. Oh, you mean it like this. So if you can watch media, but is the media going to get through to you? It just depends, Chet says, could you explain a bit more about 3s and 4s and the bridge from 2 to 5? Sure, definitely. Okay, great question. So 3s and 4s. So you're 2 and you live in this bubble. And you're vibing. It's kind of cool. But then it just doesn't feel as fulfilling. You can't find your place there. And every time you hop into a bubble, it's a vibe. And you're getting it. You're like, yeah, I get it. I'm on board. Like, I love this idea you're doing. I can really get on board with it. But here's why I stop. Like, it's like kind of like you're enjoying a bubble. You're like, oh, I'm really enjoying this. Oh my God, this is so fulfilling. Oop, I hit a ceiling. And this is where the bubble says, yeah, but this is the end. And you're like, there's nothing more. This is the ceiling. All bubbles get capped out. They get capped out. Okay? That's why you have to pop the bubble to do something different. Because all bubbles, all perceptions are limited. That's why you have to keep, if you're a 5, you keep growing and popping bubbles and learning new things because the limitation is, you're aware of the limitation. 2s don't usually know there's a limitation to their belief. They think they did it. They think they like discovered all there is to know a lot of the time. Not everyone, just a lot of the time. Okay. Or they're not curious whatsoever. So you're 2, you're like vibing. You finally hit the top of the bubble and you're like, I got to get out of this thing. Hey, where do I go to get out of this thing? Man, how do I get out of this thing? You have to, again, kind of like pop the bubble out. But when you pop the bubble, where are you now? Well, if you're a 3, now you're in the bubble of the 3. But it's not a place exactly. It's kind of like a void. Like, there's no meaning to the 3-ness. There's only a curiosity that, man, this can't be all, right? Like, this bubble here, this can't be all there is. So then you end up circling. You almost kind of end up like, I don't even know how to explain it. Like, you kind of like, hold on. So there, okay? You keep going, boop, 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 boop. Like the 2s and the 3s, like the 3 circles in and out of the 2 bubbles. And they keep going back and forth. And they're like, I'm not getting it. I'm not getting it. Where do I belong? Where do I belong? And then finally, they're like, okay, there must be something more. And that something more is like the 5. Right? Or sorry, the 4. So then it's like, okay, but what's 4? 4 is an intense realization. Okay? So 3 is like a bridge. Okay? So there's like 2s over here. Ignore that. But 4, what is 4? What even is it? You don't know because you can't see. But you know if you break down this wall, there's something else. But because you can't see it, it feels like, what could it possibly be? Maybe magic or dragons. Or, oh, God is real. Or maybe what it actually is, and this is what 4 is, which is why it's like really difficult, usually. Hold on. I'm trying to think of how to draw it. Okay. 4. Okay. So here's where the 2s are and here's where the 3s are. And 4 is over here. So you're no longer with people. You're alone right here. And you're viewing it almost from the outside, but also from the inside of your own bubble. So it's like, wait. So everything you thought, every single thought you ever had, every single idea of what it means to exist, everything you ever thought was true is seen or understood with a different perception. Like a perception that is almost like crippling, because you're like, wait, what does this mean now? Where do I belong? Like as a 3, you didn't belong before, but you still could vibe or choose a bubble and find belonging. As a 4, you're not going to find belonging in those bubbles. You're not going to find yourself there. You don't even belong there. When you show up, you're like invisible in a metaphorical sense. You're never going to feel as a 4 like any of it matters in the same way, because you know all of it is a limitation and a construct. And so when you say to people, just like, stop it, like, stop being violent, stop being racist, like, let's stop, just stop it. You can't, right? You can't. So then it feels stuck. You're like, what? Like, what does this mean? But this isn't just related to the humans. It's related to the whole universe, your literal existence. It's not limited to people. People are not the arbiter of knowledge. The 4 knows that the universe is just as valuable. Rocks and meteors and trees and animals and dirt, it is just as a part of this construct as people are. So bubbles could be the animal bubble, earth bubble, space bubble, universe bubble. Okay, but then here's the dilemma, is like when you're a 4, you have to remind yourself that you're still in a bubble and that you are not better than the 2. You are simply having a different relationship with perception that now might not feel relatable to the 2s, but it is not better than what the 2s are doing. It is simply different. And you must accept that it is not better, but different. And therefore, your bubble forms again. Once again, you're closed in by a bubble, only the bubble is of your own making. And then you hop between the 2 bubbles and the 5 bubble. Okay, the bubble you created, the bubbles you visit. And then you find your place again in the universe. 4, they don't know their place in the universe. They're lost again, but with no connection to the 2 bubble. Versus the 3 bubble, at least they had some connection to the 2 bubble. So they didn't feel as alone. But the 4 bubble, no connection. So the 4 bubble has to go to the 5 bubble, which then learns how to live with the 2 bubbles. You know, it's not about being better. It's just about having a different relationship with the perception, you know? Just as it feels much like a 4 Jesus Christ, I feel like I would have been I feel so much like a 4 Jesus Christ. Oh, comma, Jesus Christ. I feel like I've been a 3 for so long because I didn't have community growing up, so I never got to be joyful in one bubble. I was always bubble hopping. But in the past few weeks, I felt so lost, but I've also had a strong sense of myself. But the pain of feeling so alone is not something I've been able to radically accept yet. Definitely a 4 is how I feel. Is that in relation to the bubbles, like Earth and humans, or in relation to all of existence? Because 2s can go through what they feel like is the 5 levels. Like, I don't know where I belong. I just feel like sometimes you'll see it like an angsty Reddit atheist, right? And not to discount the commenter, I'm just using it to have a larger conversation, where they're like, man, like they think within the limitation of the existence, and mostly as humans, as being the center. Humans are not the center of the universe. Humans are part of the universe. And often I think like 2s think they're 5s because they are like, yeah, dude, I'm like smarter than everyone else. No, you can't be smarter than everyone else. That's not how that works. That's not the answer. So the language you use, like, what does it mean? So it's realizing that human beings aren't the center of the universe. They're just a part of it. But 2 bubbles center humans as the center of the universe because it's how our animal brain perceives reality, much like a cat. My cat, Indiana Jones, she's the center of her universe. You just know it, girl. Okay? I know I'm not the center of the universe. I'm hardly the center of my own universe. Okay? In my bubble, I'm not even the center of the universe. I'm just a part of it. In my 5 bubble, we are not the center of the universe. We are just in it. The universe is like the expanding unknown, everything outside of ourselves, right? Chat says, can fives use elements of Christianity to describe their fivedom, 5 quality? Is it possible that they come to terms with their chaotic existence but still understand it through the lens of religion? I think a 5 could attend church, but if a 5 ever felt like religion could be true, that would be very strange. Because religions are predicated on the limitation of belief. They are, by definition, limiting. So it would make no sense to be a 5 and religious. Though you could be a 5 who acts religious and goes to church and looks like a 2. I don't know why you would do that, but you could. You could use you could use like Christian language or religious language, but religion by definition, like by the way that it's used right now, is a limiting belief that claims to know the truth. Chet says, when you use words like self-aware and introspection, what is your definition of the difference between them in your framework? Because some people use them as synonymous, but you clearly don't. Yes, great question. So you can be self-aware. God, I really, let's see. My doctor, I'm making up a story now. Your doctor tells you, hey, you got to exercise 5 days a week and you can't have sugar. And you have to do this because you have a medical problem. It's like really important. And then you go home and you're self-aware. You're like, I can't have this. I can't do this. Whatever happens, I can't do it. But you're not really like, your why isn't good enough. Like, why isn't good enough? You haven't really thought about, well, why aren't I eating these things? So then you're like, fuck it. I'm just going to eat these things. So a self-aware person could know that I have to eat this. My doctor told me, or I can't eat this. My doctor told me not to do this. But I'm not introspective enough to know why, so I'm just going to do it, even though I know why, because he said it would hurt me, but I don't know why I'm not doing it. An introspective person can say, okay, if I eat this food, it will kill me. Why don't I want it to kill me? Hold on. Do I want to die? Should I die? No. I've decided I'm not going to die, so I'm going to listen to my doctor because I would like to exist at least until tomorrow. That's like a certain level of introspection, okay? You might be self-aware about something. I mean, I hear from men all the time who are like, I know I'm really bitter. I know I'm really resentful. I know I really look at women like they're less than me. I know that it's me. I know I'm the problem. And you might say to them, oh, you should talk to this therapist. I heard they're really great with this kind of a problem. And they go, no, I'm not going to do that. It's like, why? You just said you identified the problem. Like, you just identified the problem. And they're like, yeah, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to buy a boat instead. I'm going to buy a Ferrari. I'm going to date a 20-year-old instead. It's like, you just named the problem. You're self-aware. Why aren't you deconstructing that? So you can be self-aware enough to name the problem and absolutely do nothing about it, right? Not necessarily a 1, because 2s fix the problem a little bit, but maybe not fully for the right why. I feel like people are so self-aware, but they don't do anything with it. Yes, calling out Bojack. Bojack is so self-aware and does nothing with it. But it's different than a 1 who's self-aware and does nothing with it, because I think it shows up on a spectrum with 2s, where maybe the 2 goes, okay, I can't eat this brownie or smoke this cigarette, but I'm just going to eat the brownie but not smoke the cigarette. It's like, okay, that's a little bit better, I guess. And the 1 is like, I'm going to have both and I'm going to bomb a building. It's like, what? Whoa. It's like they go beyond, It's like I'm exaggerating, but it's like you're self-aware. You just named the problem, but you can't do it. And this is why I say, like in therapy, like when working out, like going to the gym, when getting on a new diet, when going vegan, when doing anything you're doing, it can't happen overnight for all of us. For most of us, myself included, it takes time. You have to meditate and deconstruct. You have to think to yourself, why do I believe this? Why did I say this joke? Why did I think that about women? Like, I suffer from internalized misogyny. I'm always like, oh, Brittany. I'll give an example. Let me think of a good one. I'm trying to think of one where, like, sometimes I'll see a girl, when I was younger especially, and I'll see a girl and I'm like, you're crying too much. Like, you're making women look bad. Stop crying. That's misogyny. That's internalized misogyny. That's a fear that I'm going to be judged for doing something that's so fucking human, but because it's an attribute given to women as a fault of theirs, showing any kind of weakness in front of a man is bad. And then I internalize as a little girl that like crying in front of a man is a sign of weakness, period, outside of the construct of misogyny. And then I had to deconstruct that and say, not only do I cry a lot, and you will not make me feel bad for it, because everyone should cry a little bit more because it's so healthy. Okay. Now, even crying, though, requires a level of introspection and deconstruction. Why am I crying? Why do I cry? Does it make sense to cry here? Am I having like a biological experience where I'm not even sad, but I'm crying because I'm exhausted? Or am I having a sad experience where I'm triggered into crying because I'm sad? Like, even crying requires deconstruction. Everything requires a why. Why do I do this? You ever be on a first date and I'm trying to think of an example. Oh, remember that guy I shared where he's like, I've never dated an autistic girl, but I think she asked me more questions about my life than anyone's ever asked me my whole life. Like, she asked me questions I never thought about. And yeah, that's like just an autistic person asking questions. So that's not even a 5. That's just a person who's curious and not following the social script of not asking personal questions. 2s do that all the time. You know? Like Disney. Wait, I read chat. Sorry. You said, I bet Disney was a tool in your journey. A lot of older Disney movies have a why song. Disney's great. I love a Disney movie. But you know, 2s can ask, like, if you're socially, like, an autistic 2 can ask a question outside of the social script that feels profound to people. Which is why a lot of autistic boys who are in the atheist bubbles and debate bubbles think they're really introspective. Because they're like, why is pedophilia bad? Why can't we have sex with children? Like, why don't we fuck sheep? And it's like, okay, everybody relax. But they think they're like super profound because they're asking the questions nobody asks. And I'm like, well, okay. I think you're asking them for the wrong reasons. Like, your why is wrong. If you're just asking an edgy question because you think like, yeah, fuck people, they're not like deep like I am, your why is wrong. You're not actually being inquisitive. When Jordan Peterson is like, these Machiavellian mothers cutting off the tits of their daughters. Why? Why do we like fat people? Not pretty. Like, he's not asking why. Jordan has introspection to him, but it's limited. And it stops around fat people and trans people. He just stops. His brain shuts down. He's like, oh yes, the meaning of man, fighting my demons and my dragons. What does it even mean? Is fire a predator? Is that a fat woman? Oh my God, is that a fat person? I can't handle it. I'm fucking dying. You know what I mean? Give me the drugs. Give me the drugs again, benzos. You know what I mean? It just doesn't make sense. He's limited. He's just like, he'll ask questions and he stops the moment he sees a trans person. He's just like, I can't. Versus, I think a lot of people, like, they don't have, like, I think that's normal though. I think like that's everybody. Did you see this? Oh my God. Did you see did you see that video? Hold on. Let me see if I can bring it up really fast. Oh my God, I was dying. Oh, first of all, this is a hilarious video, but not this one. Where is this video? Wait.
All those policies have.
Whoa, hold up. Okay, look. I've showed you guys this video before. How do I? It's TikTok. Okay, look at this perfect bubbles example, right?
Have not done what they promised. Would you agree?
I would not agree.
So you think we're better off as black people now than we were before LBJ?
Yes, brother, we can vote without the threat of violence. Are you talking about the Civil Rights Act of 1964? Is that what you're describing as a negative thing? Was the Civil Rights Act of 1964 a bad thing?
I agree with the Civil Rights Act of 1964.
Thank you.
But at the same time, I'm also put like this. I prefer dangerous freedom over peaceful slavery.
Oh,
I don't know what that means.
Okay, dangerous freedom over peaceful slavery. The word freedom, this is why we go back to that question earlier in chat. The word freedom is a marketing tool by people to convince you that you weren't already born free. We're all born free. And the freedom, the way we used our freedom was to create slavery, was to be racist, was to be transphobic. Like the way we as a human species evolved with our freedom, our biological experience, which I know Robert Sapolsky would say was determined because of our biological predispositions. But the reason we are the way we are is because this is how we've used our freedom. So when we fight for more freedom, we're just fighting for more choice to be free to make more bad decisions or maybe some good decisions. Okay, hold on. I have a couple of TikToks that I had up in case we needed it today. And let me see if I can get the second one. This one. Okay, this one's too good, bros. Get ready. That's so funny. Oh my God, I love this. Okay, this is a great stream. Okay.
Based on your gender that you needed to pull. Attacked based on your gender that you needed to pull this magic card.
Mr. Caskey, I don't have gender. Gender is a mental disorder, and I assure you I am all woman. I know you don't know what a woman is, but here I am.
I'm not really sure what to do with that.
I'm sure you don't. I'm sure you don't.
Well, again, I appreciate your fantasies, but I'm here to talk about the law, Ms. Cromer.
I'm
and
sorry.
that may be something that you failed to contemplate in your responses here, that perhaps you'd be asked questions and your criticisms wouldn't be lodged on the basis of your gender, but rather on the ignorance of the proposition. And so as I look at this particular one, it seems
Mr.
at
Speaker,
least...
I call point of order of
at
decorum.
least-
I have already, he is saying that I have a mental disorder by associating me with gender. I do not have a gender. I have a sex, and it is female.
It's so good. You can't make this shit up, bro. It's so funny. That's what I'm saying. How could I ask this lady to be like, do you want to have a real conversation, please? She can't. She's limited. Her bubble has a belief. So let's go back to my little paint. Let me see. I love those. I love those TikToks. They're so good, dude. So fucking good. I love people. I love humans. Oh, they're so good. Okay. So let's use the gender one because that one's too good, bro. I was dying. Okay. So she lives in a 2 bubble. And she has this understanding of gender. I'm going to call her a 2C. She might be a 2B, but I don't know. This is... No. Fuck that. Fuck the levels. Hold on. Let's talk about gender. Hold on. No, let's do it this way. She's in a 2B. She's in a 2 bubble. Doesn't matter the A, B, C. Doesn't matter. Okay. She's in a bubble. And this whole bubble has different levels of understanding around gender. Okay? And every person goes on a journey of learning all the new ways to pop a bubble about gender. And all of us stop in different places. Okay? Okay. The question is, where do you stop? I am in the furthest to the right arrow, where I don't think we've even started to really understand gender. I think we're in the middle of understanding it. I don't think we can go back to the past or into the future. We can only understand the present. And gender is just, we don't know as much as we know. So I'm like, I want to know. I don't think there is. For a lot of people, they're like, this is gender. This is gender. This is gender. This is gender. And I'm like, man, gender, am I right? So much to learn. So exciting. I can't wait to learn it all because I don't think we can categorize gender in the way that we've been binarily doing it. And I'm excited to see what else we create, which is a construct to put a name on an experience. All we're ever doing is putting names on experiences. And the reason there's so many labels is because there are 8 billion people with trillions of experiences, all of which deserve its own categorization and label. The reason we don't know anything about life in the way we think we do is because our brains would explode from all the knowledge. What we do instead, we pay attention to the limited amount of information that we can hold in our brains without them exploding. All of our brains are limited with storage, just like a computer, and eventually we will be full. And we can delete things and replace it with other items, or we can erase it all together and start again. But because of this limitation, we always have a problem with how that makes us feel about our ego. So this is why I say humility is key to the levels. You have to have the humility to know you don't have all the information. And that's really scary. It's really, really scary. It's just really scary to think, shoot, what am I missing? You cannot exist without causing harm. You can only ever work on causing less. But you cannot exist without causing harm because you are limited. And because we are limited, we will then be responsible for some negative. That's why when I meet people who are like, I'm a 5, and I was like, okay. And then they deny being prejudiced or biased. They deny the fact that they have to deconstruct. They deny the fact that they don't know everything. They deny the fact that they could be the problem. I'm like, okay, I think we're talking about different things. The reason, like, when I first put out the levels a couple years ago, it made some certain people really upset, especially for like boy philosophy debate bubbles, was because they exist with an ego that tells them that they could have the answer. So they think I'm presenting a system that has the answer. And I'm saying there is no answer. There is simply discovery. There is no answer. There is no, okay, I found it. This is all I ever need to know. There is no end to the answer. But people don't, they really can't, and this is so fair, they're having like a evolutionary like limitation. And I think some of us sort of have a different experience with that. Now, I don't know how much of it is like the body I was born into, the brain that I was born into. I mean, I think that has to play a huge role, right? I mean, so much of my own understanding comes from the hardware. So I'm working off the hardware. I'm updating as much as possible, but I'm going to be limited. Like, I'm going to be limited. So knowing that, when people have good faith conversations with me, you've seen it, I'm more than happy to hear them out. I think yesterday's conversation was a good example of that. I was checking out Elle's chat and, and even the people who are visiting my chat. And most of them are like, wow, like Brittany's being so open-minded. Like, this is so different than what we're used to. But that's because they're used to debates. Like, Elle primarily debates, which is so valid. But I don't want to debate because I don't need to know that I'm right. I need to get closer to what's real, what's true. But it's not about Brittany. You can't discover truth in the sense that it's now a part of your legacy. See, man has evolved to take ownership over truth as if it was theirs. You did not create truth. It just is. It exists outside of you. And I think in some ways, because I was raised AFAB in some big way, or maybe in a way because I'm autistic, who knows, something about my brain allows me, and I've always been this way, I've never cared about legacy. Even like 10 years ago, I remember having YouTube conversations with people that are like, don't you care about legacy? For what? What do I need it for? What does it get me? I think I was the type of category of person who would naturally find herself interested in this thing. But it doesn't make me better than other people. It just means like, yeah, I didn't have a choice in this, but since I'm here, I'm going to utilize it. And I think a lot more people could go on an introspection journey, but I just don't think that it's like they necessarily have the tools. Just like I had to go out and get them. Part of the tool is curiosity. Like a part of it is curiosity, and I don't think people are as curious as they say they are. I remember when I was outside of high school, so many, many years ago, I had a blog, and my dad used to read my blog. And I remember I put out a blog about trans people, and I was a Republican at the time, but I was empathizing. I was like a closeted queer person. So I was like advocating for queer people as a Republican. I was trying to get the Republicans to stop being anti-gay. Because even when I was a Republican, I like wasn't anti-gay. I was being like a centrist about things where I was like, well, maybe we don't need marriage. But when I was a Republican, I would advocate for gay people, and they would be like, are you gay? Is that why you're advocating for homosexuals? And I was like, what? Me? What? So when I was a Republican, I was like, we need to change things. Okay. Because I was centrist minded, and I thought, well, maybe Republicans have some good policy. Y'all, update, Republicans have zero good policy. That's why being a centrist makes no sense. What good policy do Republicans have? Nothing. Thank you. Okay. So I put out this blog about trans people, and my dad read it, and he was like, Betsy, this is very bad. We can't be validating people's mental illness. And I was like, well, maybe the mental illness is relieved by the surgery, or maybe just identifying, or maybe we're looking at it wrong. Do you think we could be mistaken? And he goes, no, because we have religion. And I was like, oh. And that was like my realization that the Republicans and conservatives, like they were never going to change with new data. They don't change now with new data. That's why they're talking about getting rid of gay marriage, because they refuse to look at the information. So I was like, okay, I'm going to leave this bubble now. And that was like very hard. Like that was like very hard for my family because like I was very outspoken. Like I'm me now, but Republican. So you can imagine that I was like advocating, I was loud, I was vocal. This is hard for people because they've given themselves a construct with this limitation, which, by the way, can make a lot of sense, right? Because we need structure, community, consistency. Those are the three things science proves we need to have a flourishing society. The dilemma is like, what if you don't fit into that construct? You make your own, you start new communities, but then what happens if those two communities decide to kill each other? Well, that's also part of our animal experience. Like we're animals on a planet experiencing conflict, and this is how we solve it. So who am I to think I'm better than anyone else when at the end of the day we're the same? Now on the micro, we can talk about better. So on the macro micro, let's talk about that. Okay. So Okay. So here's us. We're like in this little circle, and this is our life, and we're all operating within this circle in different ways, whatever that means. Okay. The more you zoom out, the further you are from feeling like these things are that important. Like, why are we even spending time talking about feeding or clothing people when we should just do it? Just do it. Just give them housing. What the fuck? Why are we arguing about this? And we're arguing about it because within the construct of our perception, okay, this is us. We see this person over here as separate from us, and they're doing something different, and we don't like what they're doing. And unless they come over to our side, we can't trust them. Because if they were like us, they'd be with us. And since they're not with us, we can't trust them because they're not doing the same things we're doing. They're not following the consistency, the structure, the community. They're operating outside of those bounds, which means they could be a threat to us. Okay? These people, okay, don't realize that, how do I do this? This person over here is looking this way. They're not worried about what you're doing over there, but you are looking at them because you're worried about what they're doing, but they're not even looking at, they're literally not even, leave me alone. Okay. They're literally minding their business. But since you walk over and make it their business, now they have to pay attention to you. Okay. Now, wow. Great, Brittany. Now, now we're at war. Okay, now we hate each other. Congratulations. Because we are like energy meeting energy or conflict meeting conflict. If I'm walking down the street and I'm like, la, 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 and somebody's like, hey, bitch. I'm like, oh, are you calling me bitch? And they're like, yeah, you bitch. I'm like, oh, I wish to not engage. I'm going to keep walking. And I've made a choice. So now I've made a decision not to engage. I had an option. I could engage or walk away. I decided to walk away. I'm walking away. They follow me. Okay, now I'm being followed. Like, okay. Now I have two options. Run faster, scream for help, confront them, talk to them. I could try to do like, I could start running through all the, like, what can I do? Okay, well, okay, I turn around. Hi, I'm sorry, is something wrong? I don't know why you're following me. Fuck you, bitch. And it's like, oh, okay, are we, like, I would rather not fight you. I would rather just like, help, somebody help. Like, I don't want to fight you. Okay. And it's like, well, you're going to fight me today because I've decided we're going to fight. And it's like, fuck. Okay. You decided we were going to fight. So I can fight. I can let you win. So not fight back. I can be like a pacifist. I can run. I can scream for help. I could do all of the above. What do you do? Because in that moment, you're limited. We're all free to do what we want, but we're limited by that moment. Now, okay, what if you find out that person was having a really bad day and was like, I'm going to take it out on another person? You'd be like, what an asshole, bro. Just because you're having a bad day doesn't mean you have to ruin it for other people. True. But why do you think that? Why do you think that when you're having a bad day, you can't take it out on people? Why do you think that? Where did it come from? Who taught it to you? Where did you learn it? Because if you grew up in a home where when your parent is upset, they beat you, then what you learn as a child is when you're upset, you should beat people. Because that's what it's for. And so what we do is we mimic, because we're like caveman, we're like little animals, we mimic the way we're trained. And then you have to face the training you were given and say, do I want to do something different? And I think you can reverse that training or break that training and move forward. But that training takes a lot of effort and work. And most people, life is hard enough. They're already trying to pay their bills and do stuff. It's worth it for them not to do it, not to change the training, and to make their life work within that training. For Brittany, personally, my journey is I recognized the training. I tried to break the training, but I recognized that even when I broke the training, it wasn't enough. I was still not content. And I was like, okay, I'm going to need to do something more now. I am content in a spiritual way. I'm not content in a lack of curiosity way. Like I'm not stagnant in my contentedness. I think contentedness it's twofold. You want to be content with life by radically accepting. That's beautiful. But you also want to, because I think this is sort of a biological experience, aim for greater things in the way that you might as this category of person. You know that thing Republicans always say, right? Where they're like, you can't give people housing and clothing because they won't want to work anymore. I think people who want to work, me, will work. That's why I don't care if I give you housing or clothing. Look, if you don't want to work and you don't want to contribute in some way, in that particular way, and I'm going to use work as a very particular thing, like work, like career. If you don't want a career, I don't think that's bad. I think there are other things you could be doing, but I think the people who want those things will do it anyways. Just like if you want to be introspective, you're going to do it anyways. Just like I did it anyways. It didn't matter what the world was doing around me. It wasn't going to stop me from being curious because I think I'm built this way. I don't think I'm special. I think it's just how I was built. And I'm utilizing past my perceived limitations to get to my real ones. This exploration into the curiosity of Brittany. I will reach my limit one day. And I've reached my limit in some ways for certain things. But I know there's more to me. I know there's more I'm capable of. And I just want to see it through. But that doesn't have to be your dream. Most people don't want to reach their limits. They think they're already there. But I'm telling you this right now, 90% of you are not even close. But you've been conditioned to think you are because that's what people think of each other. That's what they think of themselves. You'll never be better than this. This is all you have. This is just how you were born. You are so much more than the world thinks you are, but you are so much more than your own brain has convinced you are. But you will reach a limit. I just think it's more than we think it is. Same with the levels. Twos think they found the height of the limit of knowing. There's so much more. You know? Chet says, do you think you could function in a society without a career? You or people? Do you think people, you, like the greater you or Brittany you, do you think you could function in society without a career? Anyone can find their place in the world. It just might not look the way you think it does. Because careers are specific. They're a type of contribution to society that isn't the only contribution people make in a society. We all contribute to society in different ways. Careers are just one specific genre. And it's very limited. Everybody works, but the way the system is built right now is in catering to people's strengths. So like, yeah, Chet says not every job is a career. Exactly. Everybody has a job. Not everybody has a career. Even if you get your housing paid for and clothing paid for and basics paid for by the government, you're still going to have a job to do. It's just not going to look like the way we think it works here. And remember, the world doesn't even work like America as an example. Croatians can always tell I'm an American, they said. They say they can sense the stress on my body when I'm like, we've been at lunch for 6 hours. I have to go back to work. And everyone's like, man, okay. And I was just like, what? Like, you know, they have like they say there's like an anxiety about me, which is like very interesting, right? Because when I'm thinking about life and career, I get excited, but also to dedicate all my time to like my job is a part of my joy, but also has to have balance. I'm always seeking balance with my life. And I think I do a pretty good job, but we're always working on it. It doesn't matter what level you are. You're always going to be working on it or not. You don't have to, but like I really, that's what I do, Jess says, how about the 2s you talk about the levels with? Don't they know they have limited views but are content? I thought I remember you saying that. Yeah, so like my family and I openly talk about the levels, and it's a combination of different levels of 2s where some of them won't face themselves, so they're in deep denial. And that's sad. Right? But they're in denial of even functional within their 2 bubble. So that's just like mental health and struggles and pride, right? That's one category. Then there's the category of people that are 2s, but they're really confident and joyful and comfortable, and there's no reason to disrupt that. Okay. And then there's the 2s that wouldn't even know where to start. So they're like, I'm good, bro. Like, I don't even know where to start with that stuff. I'm just going to chill, But they're always dealing with stuff, right? Because if they're every 2 requires a level of introspection to help themselves, basically. That's why we go to therapy. It takes a level of introspection to say, I need to go to therapy. So think about all those people that are like, I'm not going to therapy. I don't need that. That's a lack of introspection. If you need to go to therapy, if that would be the tool that would help you and you don't go, that's a lack of introspection. Now, if you have gone to therapy and that's not the tool you were looking for, you need a different tool, that's just good data collection. It's not that everybody needs therapy. It's that most people who think they don't need therapy would benefit from it greatly. And most people who get the right therapist benefit from it greatly. They also have to be ready to be in therapy. In the same way you have to be ready to be introspective and curious and open. When I went to my first therapist, I wasn't vibing with her and I wasn't really ready to do the work. And then eventually I fired her because we were not vibing. I got with a second therapist and I was ready. It took about 30 days at 6 sessions. So I guess a little longer, maybe 2-3 months of seeing this therapist to make me realize like, okay, I need to be ready to do therapy. Then I got there. I was ready to do therapy. And I got the best out of therapy I could have gotten because I was ready. Same with introspection, extrospection, same with our life, same with, moving up levels or down levels or deep into whatever you want to call it, moving more in depth with your introspection. You have to be ready. That's why I say, like, you can't snap your finger. Like, if everything was just logic, I could go up to the racist person and say, stop being racist. And they're like, I never thought about that anymore. Like, okay, hey, stop being a rapist. It's like, oh, I never thought about that. Thanks. Like, if we could just tell people and that would be enough, then, but that's not how we work. It's not enough. A lot of us have to touch the stove. A lot of us have to have an embodied experience. A lot of us have to research or hear it the right way or have it click in our brains just the right way. Like, you can't just tell somebody to stop doing something because it's obvious to you. Like, what is obvious to you isn't obvious to other people. And that's a part of the radical acceptance. That, when I was a 4, I was really struggling because I was like, wait, so I can't just explain it to people. Like, why can't I say it? I feel like it should be so easy. I'll just explain it. But no, I had to accept that I couldn't just explain it. I had to accept that no matter how I said it or how well I practiced or whatever I did, like, it wasn't enough. That is a part of the radical acceptance. Like, it's not going to be enough just to explain it. But it might be enough for your journey, right? It might be enough for your journey. It might be enough for what you need to do, but it might not be enough for them because they're on their own journey. So I give everyone around me as many tools as I can. I do the best for my community as I can, and then it's up to you. I can't do anything other than what I can do, just like anybody else, just like anybody else. Yeah. Okay. Now, I think I've said everything that I want to say about the levels technically that I had planned, though I do have some more TikToks I could show you of other. Well, actually, let me show you this one. Hold on. Let me pull it up because I did pull it up for you guys today. Okay. No, let me show you some more TikToks to just put in the levels a little bit more. And then I'll open it up to you guys if you have any questions. But I do have more TikToks.
Every Sunday.
Hold on. Let me pull this up for you. Okay, so let's observe
Every
this.
Sunday night during session, I say goodbye to my wife and kids and make the 3-hour trek to St. Paul to fight for our way of life. Because day after day, it is under attack from Metro liberals.
A Minnesota state senator just arrested, accused of soliciting a minor for prostitution. 40-year-old Senator Justin Eichhorn is a Republican representing Grand Rapids. Bloomington police say that detectives posed as a 16-year-old girl and arranged to meet with him in Bloomington. Well, he was arrested after arriving in the area of the meeting spot.
Every Sunday night during session.
Okay. What do we think about that? What do you think about that? Okay, so he's in a conservative bubble. He's a Republican with family values. Cops pretended to be a 16-year-old girl, and he solicited them for sex. Right? What is that? What is that human experience he's having? You have a wife, kids, and a family. You're literally a Republican talking about family values. What is this? What are you doing? I'm like, what is your animal brain doing? What are you even doing? What is he doing? I couldn't tell you. I couldn't tell you what makes a person do these things. But would it be cool to find out? What is that? What does he even know? Like, does he even know why he did that? Because I have a theory that he doesn't even know. And so I can't know. I can only guess. Like, why did he even do that? I don't think he knows. I think it's easy to think we know. But I look at that person, I think you don't even know why you put your pants on every morning. You know? I don't think they know. I think they're evolved animals on a planet, and their monkey brain is just like, I'm going to do this thing and I'm not going to think about it. But would they be different if they thought about it? And would they even be able to change? You know, and that's why I believe in like care facilities for people without torturing them or being cruel to them. Prison systems in America are just like, talk about a crazy bubble with corruption and gangs and death and rape. It's just horrible. So like, that's the thing is like, why do you do that? Now, again, I think he's having a similar experience to like billions of people on the planet. Like billions of people are like this person. Because as much as we are like, oh my God, you know how many people get up here? Andrew Tate bragged about having sex with a 15-year-old. He's like, it was legal. It was legal. They brag about it. Heck, I got 15, 16-year-old aunties and grandmas who are married to adults in my family. He's not far off from billions of people on this planet. Iraq just lowered the age for child marriage. We know that this is a billions of people problem, but we're acting like it's not. What are we doing? What is society doing? How are we raising our kids that we are normalizing this behavior in any capacity in a way that we're not also accepting that we're animals on a planet and we need to evolve past this need to just procreate with things we think are pretty or young or viable or give us babies? How many Republicans get up here and talk about the viability of a body and how women have to be young to have babies and offspring? This shouldn't even be a part of our vocabulary, except that it is. And you have to radically accept that this is where humans are. This is where humans are. The construct they build, it's how we have the conversation. This is society. This is life. Okay, look at this one.
A transgender influencer has been jailed for 3 years in Indonesia for telling Jesus to get his hair cut. Ratu Thalisa, a trans woman with over 400,000 followers on TikTok, was live streaming on October 2nd, 2024, when a viewer told her to cut her hair short to look like a man. In response, Thalisa held up a picture of Jesus Christ on her phone and said, "You should not look like a woman. You should cut your hair so that you will look like his father," referring to the father of her viewer. 5 Christian groups filed a complaint with the police for blasphemy, and on Monday, the 10th of March, 2025, Thalisa was found guilty of spreading hatred under a widely criticized online hate speech law and sentenced to 2 years and 10 months in prison. She was also ordered to pay a fine of 100 million Indonesian rupiah. The court claimed that Thalisa's comments could disrupt public order and religious harmony in the majority Muslim country. Prosecutors have already appealed the verdict, asking the court to increase the sentence to more than 4 years. The influencer now has 7 days to appeal the decision. While there is a no national sodomy law in the Southeast Asian nation and private consensual homosexual acts are not prohibited, same-sex activity is against the law in the province of Aceh under repressive Sharia law. The gender expression of trans people is also outlawed, with harsh sentences handed down to anyone convicted. A transgender influencer...
This is from Pink News, which is like an LGBTQIA news TikTok, so I follow them. Again, it's like, this is the bubble, this is the construct, this is what they've created. And this is why I say, like, tradition is so specific. Like, tradition is like in a way very bad because it sounds good. Like this is my tradition, but your tradition is also this, right? So we have to have conversations about what it means to exist within the bubble. So that person exists as a trans person, which is incredibly valid. They exist within the homophobia of this country in which they are liable now for the human beings who've created and perpetuate this construct. And so they are, this is why you have to be careful about how you exist within yourself, how you exist in the social setting, and how you exist within the whole universe. Because like you are free, but you are at the mercy of other people's energy. And if you get enough people in a crowd who agree, then that's where the country goes. That's why I do want to make it clear I'm queer. I do want to make it clear that like we're out here. Putting us back in the closet is not going to help anybody. Even with autism, certain countries are targeting autistic people like in different ways in terms of immigration. Like, you want to talk about being an activist? Like, at the end of the day, they need to know we're here, we're queer, and we're not going away. You better figure it out. We've been here since day one. And the more people who recognize they're gay, by the way, look at all these religious people that are being outed every day as gay. The problem isn't being gay. The problem is the fact that you think there's a problem being gay. We need to have these conversations. We need to be out here. We need to say like, hey, I exist. That's what advocacy is at the end of the day. It's just existing sometimes. Just saying like, oh yeah, I do that. Remember that episode of Seventh Heaven? Ugh, what a show. Where the mom was like, I've smoked pot. And everyone panics. I used to watch Seventh Heaven like back in the day. The reruns on TikTok are hilarious. It's such a bad show. But like, we need to face the fact that things are really happening because we're an animal species evolved over time. It's not going to be perfect. It's going to be very ugly sometimes. But there's also a lot of really good stuff. Here's the good stuff. Okay, in Brazil, everyone claps when a kid is lost to attract and signal their parents. This is so smart and pure. I felt so honored to see Brazilians' way of life. I didn't know this. This is a bubble pop of mine, right? So basically, from the comments that I was reading, so everybody claps, and then the parents go, oh, someone's kid is missing, and they look around to see if it's their kid. And then the parent who realizes it's their kid starts going, oh my God, it's my kid, it's my kid, it's my kid. And then they like can find their kid again. And that's the idea. Like, this is good. This is, see how humans can come together and create really beautiful things? Okay, Brazil, let's go. Now, there's this TikTok. Hold on. Find it. Hold. Okay. Oh, wait. No, this is the aftermath. Hold on. Wait. Let me find the before. Here it is. Okay. I'm sure some of you have seen this. This is Representative Sarah McBride is a trans woman, and we love her. She's in Congress, and they're making it really hard for her. They're like talking about bathroom laws and all this other stuff. And here's a dude misgendering her. I don't even know what his name is, but here.
I now recognize the representative from Delaware, Mr. McBride.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ranking Member Keating, also wonderful.
Mr. Chairman, could you repeat your introduction again, please?
Yes, we have set the standard on the floor of the House, and I'm simply...
What is that standard, Mr. Chairman? Would you repeat what you just said when you introduced a duly elected representative from the United States of America, please?
I will. The representative from Delaware, Mr. McBride.
Mr. Chairman, you are out of order. Mr. Chairman, have you no decency? I've come to know you a little bit, but this is not decent.
We will continue this
You
hearing.
will not continue it with me unless you introduce a duly elected representative the right way.
This hearing is adjourned.
Okay, girls, we are adjourned. How do you feel about that? How do we feel about that? This is grown-ups. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we're such, like, grown-ups. You know what I mean? And he's sitting there misgendering her. When, why? And he's doing it on purpose. Okay, so hold on. She replied.
I appear to live rent-free in the minds of some of my Republican colleagues. I wish that they would spend even a fraction of the time that they spend thinking about me, thinking about how to lower the costs for American families. I wish they would spend a fraction of the time that they spend thinking about me, figuring out how to make government actually work better, rather than making it work worse in order to prove that government can't work. They are obsessed with culture war issues. The Republican Party is obsessed with culture war issues. It is weird and it is bizarre. And the American people deserve serious legislators, serious elected officials who are focused on bringing people together to deliver real results for the American people.
Yeah.
I appear to.
Okay. So when I'm asked like, oh, what level do you think somebody is? Well, so obviously the guy who's misgendering her exists in a bubble that's limited, and his limitation of belief, you can see where he hits. Like, you can see it. It's like when you talk to anybody, you can see where they hit. And every bubble is different. Fives pop bubbles all the time, right? But when it comes to introspection, extrospection, you can be a 5 who pops bubbles for the rest of your life, and it doesn't like lower your introspection level down. But what 2s are, okay, hold on. Let me bring back my paint. Let me see if I can write this out for us. Hold on. Beepity boppity boo. Let me see. Do it correct. This. Okay, Boomer Pretty. Good job. Wow, I am just killing it today. Okay. Go. Okay, so. Here. So he lives in a bubble, and there's a limit. Oh, hold on. My picture got very big. Okay. There's a limit to how he can think about LGBT people, LGBTQIA. Okay. Here it is. This is it. He can't imagine anything outside of this. He doesn't have any ability to see outside of this bubble. The dilemma is that Sarah lives here. That Sarah and everybody else who's gay and queer and LGBT, whatever, we live here. Okay. But they can't see us. They don't even understand us. They can't fathom us because they can't see it. They literally can't see it. So this is him. And he's like, yes, men, women. And they're like, yeah, but like people are gender fluid and non-binary. And he's like, what? No, I can't see that. Where? Like, you're asking him to see something he can't see. He can't see it. So he forms a reality around what he cannot see instead of, what's right in front of him. I said in a video one time, I was dating a non-binary person, and I had made a video with them years and years ago. It's private now, obviously. And I said, one of the reasons that I accept non-binary people as something that exists is because, they're right in front of me. There it is. There's that thing that has a tangible reality. So, okay. Like, the proof that trans people are real is that they exist. I can poke them, unlike your God, who I can't seem to find anywhere. Right? You can be real in a multitude of ways, by experience and by tangibility. And the realness is still subjective to spectrum. What's the tangibility of your experience? It's fluid. Everything is fluid. So I can't ask that guy to understand LGBT people if he literally hasn't had the bubble pop. But what I can do is tell these people who are queer and who have had the bubble pop and realize being gay isn't wrong or being trans isn't wrong, to make sure that when they're socializing with the bubbles, they understand they're different, but they also exist within a bubble. So, here's the gays, here's the straights, okay? And they exist together in different bubbles within one bubble, within all the bubbles, right? To some extent. Okay? So we have to be self-aware. We have to do the emotional labor for ourselves to be like, okay, I'm gay and I exist with people that might have a problem with that. How do I accept them, accept myself, and accept that's where I am in history? This is where I'm at. And then how do I use love and compassion to explain things to them? And then sometimes when do I pick and choose to be a bitch when I want to? Because sometimes I'd be yelling at people. Like sometimes I'd be yelling at people, You know what I mean? So, you know, you're never alone. But fighting loneliness starts with knowing yourself. I can't go to that man and say, like, you're misgendering people. Don't be an asshole. Because he doesn't understand that it's being an asshole. But he does understand in some social context that it's being an asshole. And what he would have to do, so if I was the homophobe, I'd say, okay, I'm obviously being a social asshole because when Sarah McBride misgendered me, I realized it was annoying. But if I gender her correctly, then I might be betraying my sense of reality. How do I contend with this? How do I hold two contradictory thoughts in one hand? The same way that atheistic people take blessing from priests. The same way that we call priest father when we're not religious. The same way that we don't serve pork to our Muslim friends. The same way we don't put animal products in our vegan friends' food. Because it's not about when it's community, it's shared. When it's singular, it's not. If you want to go home and be homophobic, that's between you and your God. But when we work in community, we have to work in community. We have to get along. Now, of course, the hope is that over time, community would naturally be less homophobic. It would naturally be better. We have to get along. Now, what's the difference if you're a minority person fighting for rights within a majority? This is about rightness over wrongness, which is different than what the homophobe has to do. The homophobe has a different journey than the queer person. The homophobe must learn to get along with people that are different from them. The queer person must make it clear that regardless of the laws you put in place, I exist and I'm valid. Because remember that we are not playing the same game. We are not having the same lived experience. We are doing different things. And that's why it's not the same. Nobody's the same. No one's having the same lived experience. We are all having unique lived experiences. And so it requires of us different forms of action. Some protest, some don't protest. Both are valid. What matters is that you find the right way to express yourself, the right way to find your place in the universe, the right way to find your place in life, the right way to have a job. The right way is about your relationship with your joy. It's not about them. It's about your relationship with your joy. Sarah McBride, she's doing this probably because it coincides with her sense of self right now. This is what she wants to do with her life. She wants to put herself under the scrutiny of homophobes every day, transphobes, because I don't know, is she gay or straight? I don't even know. Sorry. I really lump all gay people together. Sorry, all queer people. Sorry, all LGBTQIA people together. I guess. Anyways, the queers. Okay, no, not all trans people are queer. The LGBTs. Okay, she's really up there every day getting this scrutiny. A lot of us wouldn't want that. A lot of us would not feel great about everybody making videos about us and picking apart our looks and our gender and our expression and our fashion. But some people really put themselves out there to do it for different reasons. I assume Sarah McBride's reason, her why, is probably really good compared to a typical politician that's there for money and status, and, you know, maybe hers isn't. Now, not all trans people are great people in that sense, or LGBT people. So maybe there's something to be said there. But I think Sarah might actually just be an authentic person who's here to advocate for her people and her communities, regardless of gender identification. And I think for that homophobe, he might think he's doing the same thing, but it's at the expense of queer communities. In Sarah McBride's world, his community still gets to exist with hers. But in his world, her community doesn't get to exist within his. You know? Okay, Chet says, my community is right-leaning and it gets hard sometimes to express myself and be heard. Oh, yes, 100. Same. My community is not. Okay, let's talk about what a community is. My Assyrian community, my family, and my religious communities are not my communities. They were communities I was born into. They are not communities I chose, but I do continue to choose to be kind to them, but they're not my community. I want to make that abundantly clear. Okay? I exist outside of that bubble. Thank you so much for the super chat, Team Philip. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank you. I really do. It really helps support the content, guys. It means so much. Please like the stream now that we're taking a pause to say that. So I want to make it abundantly clear. What is your community, right? So let's go to our writing. Let's go to our, okay, here we go. Boop, 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 boop. Okay, so the community you're born into, okay? The community you physically live in, the community you create, or the community you visit, okay? I don't know how to put those in different categories. So born into, live in, create, oh God, and visit. Okay, so this is going to look different for everybody, but we're all born into a bubble. Okay, we're all born into a bubble. Our parents give birth to us and we don't pick that. So here we are. Boom. Then we deviate from that bubble and we end up living in a bubble. Maybe it's the bubble we were raised in, or maybe we leave our small town and go somewhere else. And then maybe while we're traveling, we end up having to create a bubble, whatever that means to you, because that's where you have your sense of peace. Maybe it's like when you're completely alone. That's what I think of when I say create a bubble. But then there's a bubble in which you visit and socialize in as well. So maybe it's not your bubble when you're peaceful and 100% yourself, but maybe it's a bubble where you can be a lot of yourself. Like, unless I'm in my own bubble at home, I am never fully 100% safe or comfortable. I don't care how progressive my communities are. I don't care how I'm still dealing with human animals who are susceptible to their own traumas and own issues. The safest I will always feel is when I'm at home in my own bubble. And that includes with my partner. My partner is the only other person on earth I've ever felt 100% safe with, 100% understood by. When we're in social situations, we're always going to run the risk of offending people or miscommunicating or hurting people that we really want to make peace with. But we're not perfect. We're flawed biological creatures. We make mistakes. Or sometimes we're just horrible people, which hopefully I assume none of us are. But, and so that plays a role into things as well. So, when we think about how we feel in our communities, make sure you're identifying your community properly. Because I really want you to know you exist outside of the community you were born into unless you decide to make it your life, which a lot of our communities do. A lot of our people go back to the bubbles we were raised in and hopes to motivate those people to be different and hopes to be a beacon for those people, right? Chat says, as a Black person, it's pretty difficult to discourage homophobia in our community, but I understand your message. It is. It is so tough. You are not responsible to educate your family in the same way you're not responsible to educate homophobes or racists or anybody else. What you are responsible for is finding your joy. And if your joy is in revolutionizing your community, then that's beautiful. If your joy is in being a lived example, that's beautiful. If your joy is in answering the phone when people have questions, that's beautiful. Right? Stuff like that, right? Discord said, curious, don't have to answer it if it's too personal, but why did you originally think you couldn't date a non-binary person again? Like, what was your mental block? The bubbles. Ooh, let's talk about this. When I was dating a non-binary person, they were really great. So this isn't a slight to them. But I was in a Seattle bubble. Okay, Seattle non-binary. And there were rules to the gender expression and gender fluidity. There was a limitation. Okay, let me actually do that better. I was in the Seattle bubble, and even in Seattle, gender had its limitations. So when I was dating people and I came to this point in the gender bubble in Seattle, I was like, can we go beyond this? And they were like, no. And I was like, okay, but I think we should. And they'd be like, they'd be worried that I was signaling like conservative values to them. Like they would be worried that they weren't. So sometimes I feel misunderstood because people think I'm giving centrist views or conservative values when I'm actually giving like beyond that, like beyond, I think you exist outside of politics. So when I would be like, yeah, but you exist outside of gender or you exist outside of this construct, they would say like, no, Brittany, like being non-binary is the construct. I'm like, I know, but don't you think you kind of exist outside of it? And they were like, no. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go find out if you do. And then I went on my journey of figuring out that the issue wasn't non-binaryism or gender. The issue was the people having a relationship with it in relation to myself. So my frustrations with humanity is never with them. It's always with me. My inability to accept them, to categorize them appropriately, and to be okay with it. So anytime I had a problem with like, again, the labels, same with veganism. I don't have a problem with vegans. I might have a problem with identifying as a vegan if I don't understand the rules of the construct. If I'm allowed to be a vegan in my own construct and make it what I want, then I'm vegan. But if I have to follow the rules of that construct, then I'm not vegan. In the same way that we feel about anything. If I jump into this bubble, is this the word I would use for myself? Now, in some ways, when I socialize, I jump into different bubbles and I use different words, right? So when I go into my religious bubble, I wouldn't have a conversation about gender in the same way that I have it with you guys. Because I'm assuming you guys are at a certain level of gender education that I don't have to go back and explain to you. So if I'm in a religious bubble, then I might curtail how I have that conversation. I might even make some jokes that sound like I'm anti non-binary just to get them to laugh with me. So then I'm like, but also, God's non-binary. I might be like, oh my God, these non-binary blue-haired lesbians, am I right? And they're like, yeah, how can you even be a lesbian and non-binary? I'm like, I know, right? Like, how can you even be three persons in one? And then it's like, that's different, Brittany. That's God. I'm like, oh, that's usually how the humor goes. So the idea is that if I'm in a different bubble, I will joke with them in a way that makes them feel seen, but also makes it clear I'm not on your side. But I love you. Good luck. I think I try not to limit my relationship with the world based off of the constructs, but I try to respect that the constructs have a limitation, and I do want to respect their journey. So maybe it doesn't work for me, but I'm so glad that it works for you. I hope that as life continues to work for you, you also work on your bigotry and prejudice, which we all have to work on. Yeah. Discord says family found the key to feel free. Let's fucking go. Yeah. I think like queer people run a risk. Progressives, here, I'll give you my progressive theory. This helps. This is politics. So when you're in a political bubble, okay? Here, I'm going to dumb it. I'm going to really simplify it for us because, okay? So we've got the conservatives, the right wing. We've got the centrist, and we got the left. Okay, so we'll just wait. No, that's going to be confusing. Erase this. Okay? Right wing, centrist, left. Okay? And then what happens is, and I'm dumbing it down, people. Don't yell at me. Okay? What happens is people go, oh, right? Okay, so it has to go like this. So then the only way to go is left, because left is the closest to progression, which I do agree with. I think the more introspective you are, the more left you'll become. But I also think this is where it stops for a lot of people. They hit a wall. And I say, break the wall and keep going. But when you keep going, now it's not in politics. But this is what the bubble is limited by. The bubble is limited by this wall because it's only existing within the political bubble. But what if you exist outside of politics? You exist outside of the construct of politics. Yes, politics is life. And yes, all of society and laws and the way we congregate together feels like politics, but you exist outside of politics. And so I feel like my leftist brothers and sisters, my non-binary queens, I feel like sometimes we forget that we exist outside of politics because it feels like our whole life is political, because simply existing is making a statement. That is only because you are taking into consideration how you're being perceived, which is so valid and important. I'm taking it into consideration. I take it into consideration every day when I go live that I am being perceived. But when you turn off the computer, when you're sitting in your living room, I beg you to try to have a relationship with yourself that isn't predicated on being perceived. Who are you when nobody's watching? And do you like that person? Or do you want to change the way that you exist? When I was alone in my 20s and I wasn't being perceived, I was deeply lonely and very unhappy. Every time I thought I was figuring something out, every time I thought I was closer to understanding myself, it felt like the rug was being pulled underneath me. And then I realized, okay, I need to really like the person I am when I'm alone. And now that I am here, I'm telling you, it's a life changer. Whether you're a 2 or a 5, doesn't matter. Whether you're a 2 or a 5, you have got to like the person you are when you're alone. Because that person, that's that meaning crisis Vervaeke talks about. Humanity is sitting here struggling with a loneliness epidemic because we don't want to be alone with ourselves. And once you can learn to be alone with yourself, people become pretty great and also become things you have really good boundaries with. I'm open with the boundaries, as we say on this channel. So again, I think, oh, the queen is awake. The queen is awake. Hold on. Let me let her out. Let me let Oh my God, I'm old. I was sitting so comfortably. I'm like rusty. Okay. So the levels wasn't created out of like legacy or ego. It was created out of a need. I needed it. I needed to create the levels so I could verbalize an experience I was having that I think I'm not alone in. And I think the world is crying and screaming that they're in a meaning crisis, but refuse to watch the videos, not my videos, like for Vicky's. Refuse to read the books, refuse to meditate, refuse to see that the answers were already out there. The more I read on philosophy, the more I listen to people, the more I feel like the answers are so obviously out there, we just don't want to hear it. We know humility is key to success, and yet we promote arrogance. We know the bad guys in the stories are Andrew Tate and Donald Trump, and yet people support them. How many episodes of anime do you have to watch? How many cartoons? How many parts of the Bible do you have to read to recognize what a bad guy looks like? And the bad guy, he's not alone in this. He is a reflection of the whole. Trump didn't get there on accident. Trump got there because he had support. And that's just where people are right now. Like, that's just where humans are right now. So we have to radically accept it and keep doing the right thing that we think is right. Now, what is right and what is wrong? That I don't know objectively, but I know when I put it into practice, there's some harmony that shows up that I'm looking for as the possible solution. So when I'm trying to figure out, am I right or am I wrong? I'm trying to figure out what leads me closer to joy and harmony. What leads me to like a real sense of, oh, the puzzle piece went right back into the right puzzle piece. You know, when you're doing a puzzle, it's not fitting. I want to make sure that it feels like it fits every time. I'm like, that's what it is. I don't want to have to feel forced. I want to have it feel right. And yet knowing that once I solve one problem, there's going to be another one. But again, there's nothing wrong with an infinity of problems to solve. As long as you don't take on the burden of the world that was never yours to take on in the first place. One puzzle at a time. One problem at a time. I can't take on the world and its suffering. But I can do pretty good in my 6-foot radius. And I think that's pretty significant. And everyone's 6-foot radius looks different. If you're a politician, your 6-foot radius is everyone who can see you on TV or read about you in the newspaper. If you're Hassan Piker, it's every person that streams you, every person who reacts to you, every person that retweets you, right? Your 6-foot radius is going to look different. So knowing who you are in the story is what the levels is about. The levels is about you. Who are you? Where are you in your story? And where do you have to get to be in your joy and to remain curious? It's for you. It's not for the world. It's for you. Like I promise you, I made this for me and for you. For past me especially, you know? Okay, let's see. Chat says, I can't tell if you guys are talking to me or each other. So I'm going to assume kind of sounds like you guys are talking to each other in some of these texts. So I'm going to focus on this one that sounds like it's for me. Do you think you'd ever write a book about the levels? I feel like this is a tool I might consistently look back at throughout my life. So I don't plan to ever write down the levels. And if I had one dying wish, it would be that nobody ever do it. That probably won't happen. If I ever got any kind of like popular, somebody would do it because somebody's always bound to do it. I don't think we should write it down because the point of not writing it down is the proof that it's ever changing. To write it down is to create a bubble. It's to create a limitation on the levels. And the levels represent a lack of limitation. Once something's in a book, now people can make it into religion. They can make it into a cult. They can make it into a belief. They can say, read this book. It changed my life. Defeating the whole purpose of the levels. The levels, they're not what's true. They're explaining why we don't know what's true. And so to make them your truth, it's to not understand the levels. The levels can't be your truth. They're just the formula to show us that there is an answer we don't know the answer to. And I think this is probably the hardest part of people believing that I didn't create the levels to be and put myself at 5, like out of ego. Because they're not listening, because that's not how humans like formed, I guess. It really is about legacy for a lot of them, especially for men, like especially for people who are raised men under the patriarchy and told they have to make legacy. They can't believe it. And then they want to debate you, and then they're like, let's tear it apart. And I'm like, yeah, you're doing that thing again I don't want to do. I don't want to tear ideas apart. I want to deconstruct them and put them together and understand them. But you can't understand an idea if you're trying to prove that it's wrong. And that's usually what a lot of these like thinking bubbles do, is they try to prove why something's wrong instead of figure out like why it could be right, you know? Chad says, I like that it's not written down because it lives in my mind how I want it to be. Let's go. I have a lot of 5s I've identified that I don't think Brittany would agree. There you go. Let me see. How can you learn from other bubbles when all the bubbles around you are pretty similar or they overlap a lot? You know, sometimes if the physical limitation is apparent, then I use the internet. I use books. That's why books are amazing. They're just bubble hopping mechanisms. So if you physically are in a bubble where all the bubbles around you are kind of similar and you're curious about other bubbles, this is where you get on the internet and you start changing your algorithm and you try to figure out who exists in the world that I don't know about yet. This is when we pick up books, but it's really hard, but it's also really easy. So like, I'm trying to think of how to do this. Let me see here. Hold on. Can I do this? Oh, there's going to be ads. Oh, that's so annoying. Even if I go incognito mode. Okay. You need to read books. You need to read the books, not by the people you know, but like 10 degrees separate from them. Yeah, go to the library. If you go to the library and you go to you will have more options than getting recommendations from your friends because your friends will be similar to you. So what I do is I go into a bubble. I go, okay, who recommended this book? And then I try to go 5 degrees separate from this person to try to find the different kinds of bubbles, you know, or you can watch a movie. If you watch foreign films, I'm telling you, bubble pop. If you watch foreign news, bubble pop. If you watch how other people exist, you'll realize how similar we all are, period. Humans are humans everywhere, girls. Humans are humans everywhere. But there's nuances to us. We do things differently. There's always something to learn from people. I learn things from people every day. I learned that people steal things from restaurants and make collections in their homes. You guys are birds. Humans are literally birds collecting things that are shiny. Ridiculous. Hilarious. I don't know why you would do that, but people do it. I learned some people put their washing cap for their detergent in their washing load. I never thought to do that, and I'm not going to do it. But apparently, it's a thing that a lot of people do. Okay. Interesting. So, again, if the physical bubble is stopping you from feeling like you're interacting with enough different people, then use the internet. That's what it's for, girls. That's what it's for. You know? Let's see. Da-da-da. Jess says watching Chinese news popped a bubble for me. I love that. Yeah, I love that. Same. Like, I love watching the different news places. I just feel like, wow, like the way they even tell the same story is so interesting. Yeah, I love that. That's so cool. Okay. I think I showed you all the TikToks I had planned for today, or at least that I was open to showing you today. I mean, I could always show you more, but I feel like, did I leave anything out that you feel like you would have liked answered if you watched this live stream back? Is there something? And then, of course, like, I'm happy to do as much levels content as we want. And I'll work on, like, I figured I'd do a live stream because sometimes when I'm making like a standalone video for the levels, I get confused on like what people would want to know. Cause I could just tell you everything and then it'd be a 10-hour video. But I figure a live stream is easier for people to watch and get some answers that they're looking for directly. But let me know if you have any questions now, because otherwise that's all I had planned for you today. And I'm going to go edit Love is Blind, which by the way is getting very spicy. I'm finally out of the pods. I'm so excited. You want to talk about bubble hopping? Love is Blind is such a bubble for me. The way people ask questions, the way they're limited, the way they say, no one's ever asked me these questions before. Bro. Chat says, what is the biggest evolution of the levels now from when you last created a video about it? For me personally, I had a really rude awakening. Well, I think there's nothing. I think the levels represent a variation of being seen, right? When we put philosophy out into the world, when we put our thoughts and our feelings out into the world, and people say, oh my God, I totally get it. I identify with this. Wow, this is like exactly what I'm thinking. You're like, oh my God, do you get it? And then you realize the people you thought got it didn't get it. It's like another bubble pop of awakening of like, even you, even me, could think people get it when they don't. And then it's another form of accepting. So I think like what I learn every time I review the levels is that no matter how much I even think people are getting it, they might not be, but I think people are still getting it all the same. And I think we're so limited by our biological experience that it doesn't matter how introspective you are if you don't do anything with it. It doesn't matter how self-aware you are if you don't do everything with like anything with it. And I think that's so hard because so many people identify as 5s. So many people all think like, oh, are you a 5? And then you realize like they're not. And you're like, oh, wait, what's happening? And you realize like people are really good at deceiving themselves into thinking they are. And more than that, like I'm pretty good at like really believing people when they tell me things, which is partially like a mistake in a sense because the data is wrong. I don't think you're ever wrong for believing people. But I think what I learned about the levels is that even the most introspective seeming people are really good at deceiving themselves, which is why you'll hear people say, I'm a 5. I don't have bias or prejudice. And I'm like, oh, you've missed the point. You missed the point. And that's what I think is so like difficult every time I do the levels. Originally, I did it for the version of me that existed. And I did it for people that I thought were looking for an answer. And I think now I do it because I think it's interesting and curious and right. But I also think it's right because it's open to being wrong. Like, I think the thing that makes the level so unique, it's that it's genuinely written into the code of the levels that you will be wrong. And so the question is, where am I wrong? You know, where am I wrong? But that's hard. Even people who are like, I'm a 5, I'm a 5. The moment I'm like, where are you wrong? They can't do it. They get so defensive. I'm like, hey, I think you might be wrong. And they're like, no. And I'm like, okay. And that's so confusing to me. How can people seem so curious and so philosophical and so open, but then the limitation is so fat, but then you have to realize they're having a biological experience the same as anybody else. And I will have it too. I am limited. And my limitations must always be tested so I can remain curious and bubble popping. I love a bubble pop, you know? That says I watched your first bubble video together with a friend of mine, and in her experience, a person can move between levels from day to day. What do you think about this idea? So I think if you're using the levels through the lens of a 2, sure, but not in terms of, not literally. You can't be a 5 who goes back to being a 2, but you can be a 5 that operates within a 2 bubble and seemingly works so well within that construct, it could feel like they're a 2. But to really think like a 2 again, to really believe like a 2 again, is just it should be impossible for a 5, unless you have dementia or a TBI. Like, and I don't mean that as a joke. I mean, quite literally, unless you have brain damage, you shouldn't be able to go. It's like saying, I'll give you an example that sounds silly, but it's like saying, oh, I'm pro gay marriage and I'm pro trans people. And then one day just being like, actually, fuck them. I'm homophobic now. It's like, you can't go from why would you do this? Like, are you having a stroke? So when people say like, oh, you can go through the levels throughout the day, are you saying you go from being like homophobic to not homophobic in a day? Because I don't do that. I stay non-homophobic. You know what I mean? I stay non-homophobic. So that's what the levels are supposed to represent, a real shift in perception. So to go back wouldn't make any sense. Because did you not why would that happen? Like, what are you faulting with? What are you but again, maybe we mean different things when we say it. That says, where are you wrong? I don't know in this moment. Do you have an idea or an example that might help my brain relieve something? Can you give a small comparison of Croatian culture versus American culture? Croatians are just like really laid back in comparison to Americans. I think Croatians had different problems, but similar problems. Everybody wants to feed their kids and put food on the table. But when you hop into a Croatian bubble, it's just a small population, so the demand is different, but the same. American culture, the demand is so much greater because there's so much people. Like, I think we take for granted how big America is and why it is so difficult to make America work in a sense. It is so big, guys. It is such a big bubble of people, so diverse. It is so beyond amazing that it's even like kind of working, even though it's not working. But Croatia is 3 million people compared to America's 350 million. I think even Canada is like, what, 40 million or something? Like, it's just like a different world. It's like a completely different world. So then imagine China, right? What China's dealing with, But everyone deals with the same thing. Working, putting food on the table, affording rent. Croatians are suffering right now over inflation and tourism. A lot of European countries are pretty anti-tourism right now because it raises the prices for goods here and makes it harder for locals. A lot of rent is like really ridiculous here in Croatia for Croatians. So, they're facing the same problems. It's just on a different level, That says, can one get stuck between level 3 and 4 if 4 is 4 what is this? What is this word? I can't think of how to say it. You can't get stuck between 3 and 4. You're either 4 or you're a 3 who's a 2. 3s are glorified 2s. It's a question. It's like it's 1 foot out, 1 foot in. 4s are fully out of the bubbles. They just, cyclic. So what is that word? Why did I know this word? Hold on. I don't hear it in my head. The cycle pattern of 2 of the last occurring cycle. Cycles. So I know what you're saying. I get you. I got you. See how my brain works? See how my fucking brain works? I know what you're saying. So yeah, once you're a 3, so a 3 is like hold on, bring up okay. So you're a 2 and you're a 4. So 4, 2. 3 is kind of like you've got a foot in here and a foot here, but you're blocked. So you can't go between 3 and 4. You can only go 3 to 4 and 4 to 5, but you can go 2 to 3, 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 2 to 3. You know what I mean? 2 to 3, 2 to 3, 2 to 3, 2 to 3, 2 to 3. So 3 is just it's the curiosity that there could be more without the knowledge that there's more. So once you make the attempt to go more, you can't go back through the wall. You go back. So, okay. So hold on. So here's the, hold on. 5. Boop. 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 Okay. So the 2 and the 3 can go back and forth. The 3 goes to the 4, but it only goes 4 to the 5. Okay. You can't go from 4 to 2, but as a 5, you can visit the 2s. So 5s visit the 2s, but they do not become 2s. You can't go back. You can only go forward and you can only visit and dip your toe back in. But you can't, you know what I mean? So there are some points in your life where you just you go forward and you just can't go back. That's why it's so scary when you're like a 3 who's a 2 and you're like kind of vibing, but you're also not vibing, but also you have to want to risk everything. You have to be able to risk everything and keep going because you won't have the same you won't have the same attachments. Like, you remember when you're religious and you're like, God bless you. I'm like, God bless me. I mean, like, you're sitting there, you're like really in it. And then someone goes, oh my God, God bless you. And you're like, uh-huh. Thanks, buddy. You're not having the same feeling anymore. You're not having the same embodied experience. You're not there in the same way. You're not having the same attachment to the thing. It's different now. Like, it's different now. And when it's different, that's what perception is. It changes you. I am a different person. I am not the same person that I used to be. Like, there are people I meet who are the same people they were in high school. Even, that's why we say with twos, okay? That's why we say with twos. Whoop, hello, whoop, I made it too big. Even with twos, you have a relationship with different levels of introspection. The people, let's say, who are down here never changed out of high school and are the same. These people grew out of high school, but kind of like never grew out of college. And then these people grew into old age, but like they matured and changed as they age. Even with twos, there's a level of introspection you have to go on, but has nothing to do with getting to 5. So even twos have to be introspective and get to know themselves and grow out of your high school personality and grow out of your college personality. Like, grow out of it. Remember when we saw JD Vance and Trump bully Zelensky? Men who never grew up out of their frats. Do you even own a suit? Peaked at college. Literally peaked at college, bro. Rip. Do you even own a suit? Peaked at college. Some people, it just be like that. And then women marry them. Crazy. Crazy, ladies. But those girls also probably peaked at cheerleading, whatever. I don't know. Like, those people peaked in college too. You know? Yeah, I really think the levels is really cool. I really like it, and I'm glad that I put so much work and effort into it, and I really hope that it helps you. It might not be the tool for you, and that's okay, but I think it really helps me be more compassionate and loving and patient with people. It really allows me to set really good boundaries and remind myself, like, I get it, dude. I wish I could just say it and be enough, but it obviously isn't. It's like telling your family to get vaxxed, and they just won't. You know, like, I love you. Please get this vaccination. It will save your life. And they're just like, no. And you're like, okay, I really wish you would do this. It's like, yeah, what are you going to do? You know? Anyways, that's my contribution. That's my live stream for today. Tomorrow, I'll be back. We can continue the conversation. I'll have many more Bubble YouTube videos to watch with you, and we can keep having the conversation. You know, like I said, the levels is such a special interest to me that I could talk about it all the time. I don't know, like, if that's really what people want. So I want to give you guys diversity, but also I want to use like Love is Blind to explain bubbles and levels to you all the same. Like, this is levels. This is bubbles. Look at the way they talk to each other. I know it sounds silly because there's like, oh, it's not deep, but it's literally people being people. So please go watch my Love is Blind series if you haven't watched it, and I'll have a new video up for you ASAP. Last question for the night says, is there an age that 5s tend to be? No. From my understanding, I think it's more like the right amount of lived experience with the right level of introspection. It's like a combination thing. I'm not sure that age is going to play a role, but I'm going to say, you know, at least a couple decades old, probably. Like, I've never met a child that was a 5. I've met people. Oh my God. I had a person say to me once, I think I was a 5 when I was a child. I was like, you think you were a 5 as a child? And I was like, didn't you do X, Y, Z? Like, didn't you abuse this person? And didn't you literally hit your wife? And didn't you literally like do this and this and this? And I was like, do you think you were a 5? And like, that's the problem. Everybody wants to give themselves credit for being introspective at a young age, except now you have to account for all the mistakes you made and the way that you made them and why'd you make them. You will make mistakes as a 5. You will do horrible things as a 5, but you won't do actually horrible things. Because the premise of the 5 framework is to fight that need to do horrible things. And thank God that the worst thing I ever really did in my whole life was lie. And like, you know, girl, I didn't even tell that bad of a lie, you know, in hindsight. I never hit anybody. I never raped anybody. I never killed anybody. But for those who have done those things, and then they have the audacity to be like, I could be a 5. Sit down. We are not talking about the same thing, sir. You should be less violent. Okay? You should be less violent and more compassionate as you become more introspective. Okay? I think most people are 2s. And anyone could be anything. It just depends on the right formula of you, the making of you. So yeah, I don't know if there's a certain age for 5-ness. Because I've met people I think that are in their 20s that are 5s. I've met people in their 40s that I think are 5s, but I don't know either. Because I don't know how much of them understands the framework. I think the coolest thing about the levels, and I'll close with this, is the real embodied experience of understanding that everything could be different if we were ready to make it different. But accepting that people aren't ready. And accepting that you are people. The world is a reflection of us as a whole. All of us participate in the way that the world currently is. You cannot blame people for being human. And you certainly can't expect them to do better than you can do. And you are too flawed to be pointing fingers. Okay? That doesn't mean you can't hold people accountable. And it doesn't mean you can't create pathways for people to be brought to justice. Do it without punishment and do it without cruelty. And that's truly the change. The biggest change we can make as a species is to lower our reflex for violence, our propensity for violence, and to lower our desire to intuitionally choose violence because we think it's safer. That's your monkey brain. And though it got you here, and we're really grateful for the way that it evolved, I think it's time for our next evolution, which is to bring violence down. Start there. And I really think we could make the world, it would be interesting what the world would look like. It's not about making the world a better place, but it's about the world becoming a different place because it's a reflection of us. And that would be pretty cool to see. I doubt I'll see it in my lifetime, but you know, maybe your grandkids will see it, which would be pretty cool. But it will be what it is. You know, girls? Okay, I'll see you tomorrow. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye. Thanks, guys. Great convo today. And thank you for the super chats. I'll be back tomorrow. We'll continue the conversation.